Chapter 391. Fukasaku was enveloped and pulled by gravity, and was strangled by CG without any ability to resist. The child's father! Shima shouted anxiously, then put his hands together and burst out with fairy chakra wildly. Immortal technique, frog croaking. Suddenly, circles of sound waves visible to the naked eye quickly surrounded Kingxi, trying to use this sound-based illusion to subdue Kingxi and thus rescue Fukasaku. However, the gap in strength is too huge after all. Although the frog croaking illusion worked on CG, the effect made Shima feel like he was falling into an icy cave. After all, the Rinnegan and the Samsaragon are different. The Samsaragon has no illusion ability, but the Rinnegan does. So, the moment the sound waves of the frog croaking touched Kingxi, in just less than 1/10 of a second, Kingxi reacted quickly, and instantly burst out the power of his reincarnation eyes, violently breaking it. The next second, a yin-yang black rod was instantly released by CG from the Takamagahara space, appeared directly in Fukasaku's body, and pierced Fukasaku through. The senior elder of Mount Maiboku, Fukasaku the sage, is dead. The father of the children. Zhima's painful wails echoed all around. The 3 children had just been killed, and in the blink of an eye, even his wife died before his eyes. However, Kyoshi certainly won't let Shima be alone for too long, so he sends it to the Pure Land to reunite with Fukasaku and the 3 Gama brothers. With an expressionless face, CG casually threw Fukasaku's lifeless body towards Shima as if it were garbage. It was like a discarded stone that drew a beautiful arc in the air before falling on the ground in front of Shima, raising a cloud of dust and gravel. The flying smoke like fog quickly spread, covering everything near Shima. The next moment, with a slight movement of Kingxi's mind, one of the truth-seeking jades beside him instantly turned into a huge shuriken, and then under his control, it spun at a high speed towards Shima in the smoke. After all, the smoke and dust couldn't limit Kingxi's vision at all. The shuriken transformed by the truth-seeking jade, wrapped in an unparalleled gust of wind, shot towards Shima at lightning speed, tearing the air apart along the way. As the speed of the truth-seeking jade shuriken grew faster and faster, a series of sharp and piercing sounds of breaking through the air reached Shima's ears. The voice was so sharp that it seemed to penetrate the soul. Shima couldn't help but tremble all over, and suddenly an indescribable fear and tension surged up in him. But, it's already too late. At this time, the Tao-seeking jade shuriken was already approaching Shima. So, the moment the smoke and dust cleared, Shima was horrified to find that the shuriken flashing with dark light was already very close. Shima's toad eyes widened instantly. Although it didn't know the details of the Kaihudeo jade, just from the rapid whistling momentum it could tell that its power was extraordinary. Therefore, Shima no longer cared about collecting Fukasaku's body. At this critical moment, he leaped backwards with all his strength, barely avoiding the Tao-seeking jade shuriken, and at the same time, he further distanced himself from CG. However, Shima did not notice the hint of disdain that flashed across Kingxi's lips. So, just when Shima breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that he had escaped by luck, the second truth-seeking jade shuriken had already arrived in front of him. Shadow Shuriken. Shima immediately performed a Sichuan opera face changing, his expression instantly changed from relief to horror, and then he only had time to utter these last words in shock before he was directly cut in half at the chest by the Kaihudeo jade shuriken. Instant kill. Another satisfying instant kill. The senior elder of Maiboku Mountain, Shima Senin, is dead. It can be said that Shima's death was even more miserable than Fukasaku's. At least Fukasaku left his body behind, but Shima was directly killed by the shuriken transformed from the truth-seeking ball. Even though the truth-seeking jade cannot dissolve magic, it does not mean that if one has mastered magic, one is qualified to touch the truth-seeking jade formed by the mixture of the ultimate yin-yang escape and the 5 chakra attributes. At the same time that CG sent Shima to the Pure Land to accompany Fukasaku and the 3 Gama brothers, the Senjutsu chakra that flowed into Gamamaru below the temple hall began to gradually become thinner. And Toad Ball, who originally had a shriveled body, old and wrinkled skin, and looked extremely weak, suddenly underwent an amazing change at this moment. Its momentum began to rise step by step like a surging tide. The vast fairy chakra continuously emerged and gathered madly in its body, as if it had broken some layers of shackles and restrictions that bound its body. Its cracked lips regained their moisture in the blink of an eye, and its originally loose skin became compact and elastic as if it was tightly grasped by an invisible hand, and its whole body exuded an extremely vigorous breath of life. Immediately afterwards, Gamamaru's huge body, which had returned to its prime, disappeared in the temple hall, and then suddenly appeared in front of Kingxi. Kingxi, who was suspended in the air, looked at the suddenly appeared Gamamaru, was silent for a few seconds, and then showed a happy smile. "Old man, are you willing to come out only after all the toads in Myaboku mountain have been killed?" In Kingxi's perception, except for the old toad in front of him, all the toads in Myaboku mountain had been killed by Black Zetsu. No toad could escape the punishment of Black Zetsu, who hated Myaboku mountain so much. Gamamaru quietly looked at Seiji, who was extremely small compared to it, and ignored Seiji's ridicule. At this moment, his heart was constantly fluctuating, and he was extremely sad about the tragic situation at Myaboku mountain. However, Toad Pill was not too desperate, because it was still there. "You know, there is an immortal talisman in Myaboku mountain that can bring the dead back to life. Although after this battle it will fall into irreversible decline and its lifespan will be exhausted, but as long as it can defeat or repel the Otsutsuki in front of it, those toads whose corpses are still there can be saved by the sage's talisman, and Myaboku mountain can naturally continue to be passed down." And Gamamaru still has some confidence in this. Now he has recovered to his peak state, and the total amount of fairy chakra in his body is more than before. It still remembers that when its good brother Otsutsuki Hago Romo came to Myaboku mountain to say goodbye to it before his death, he said that its strength was very close to the 6 paths level. Therefore, with more powerful senjutsu chakra than before, Gamamaru is confident that even if he cannot defeat the Otsutsuki who has invaded Mount Myaboku and caused a bloody storm in Mount Myaboku, he will not be much different from him. Chapter 392. However, these are just Toadmaru's imagination after all. As for Kingxi, even though he didn't know what Gamamaru was thinking deep in his heart at the moment, he could still guess a rough idea out of thin air. After all, this massive amount of fairy chakra is indeed enough to make Gamamaru so confident. However, this is not enough for Kingxi. Neither Kyoji nor Gamamaru spoke again. Kyoji was too disdainful to waste words on the old toad and wanted to let it feel the pain, and that was it. Gamamaru, on the other hand, believed that there was a fundamental connection between him and the Otsutsuki, so there was nothing much to say. Therefore, after the two sides looked at each other for the last time, Kingxi and Gamamaru took action at the same time. Senjutsu Water-style Iron Cannonball. A giant water ball suddenly appeared, causing the surrounding air to tremble. The next moment, the water ball was like a meteor shining with blue light, dragging a long tail across the sky and slamming straight into Kingxi. Kingxi, who was flying towards Gamamaru at high speed, suddenly focused his eyes and his samsara eye flickered slightly. As expected of an old toad that has lived for thousands of years, a random tentative attack has such a strong power. However, it was in vain. Young name Vigana. Kingxi's pupil power was instantly output to the maximum, and he used pupil techniques to shrink the water ball directly, then continued to rush towards Gamamaru without slowing down. However, Gamamaru's figure suddenly disappeared from the spot, leaving Kingxi, who was about to kick him, empty-handed. The next second, a huge and heavy shadow quickly enveloped him like a dark cloud. Kingxi looked up and saw that Gamamaru's huge body had appeared right above him, with his limbs spread out, rushing towards him like a mountain collapsing. Senjutsu, Roof Collapse Technique. As Gamamaru fell at a high speed, the air around him seemed to be squeezed and made sharp whistling sounds. The huge weight of Gamamaru's huge body, coupled with this unique technique, actually caused the space near Kingxi to solidify slightly. The strong feeling of spatial restraint, like an invisible and intangible giant net, made Kingxi feel as if his body was tightly entangled by an invisible rope, and there was an extremely huge resistance that prevented him from making any movement. However, Gamamaru still doesn't understand Kingxi. In terms of time and space abilities, whether it is the Byakugan, the Sharingan, the Rinnegan, or the Samsaragan, none of them is as powerful as the Pure Eye. Although the above-mentioned pupil techniques all have derived abilities related to time and space, when it comes to comprehensiveness, it still has to be looked at by the Pure Eyes. After all, when it comes to manipulating time and space, the Pure Eyes is the most professional. Therefore, Gamamaru's carefully planned attack was doomed to fail. The moment Seiji discovered Gamamaru's movements, he had already switched his Rinnegan back to his Puregan, and then used the eye technique Takamaji Ehara to move to a distant place. Boom! Gamamaru's body, as huge as a mountain, fell rapidly from the sky like a meteorite and hit the ground heavily. In an instant, the earth began to tremble violently, as if a terrible earthquake had occurred. Along with this earth-shaking collision, countless smoke and dust rose into the sky, forming a smoke screen that covered the sky and the sun, and then quickly spread in all directions. And the temple nearby, where Gamamaru usually rested and slept, collapsed completely under the aftermath of this attack. However, although Gamamaru's attack was majestic and powerful, it was in vain. Kingsee's pure eyes easily broke through the constraints of space, making Gamamaru's confident attack completely in vain. In other words, Toad Pill is too big. Kiyoshi looked at Gamamaru's stunning attack in amazement. He had previously learned from intelligence that Jiraiya of Konoha used the roof collapse technique on the battlefield to summon the toads of Miyaboku Mountain. However, the effect of the technique described in the intelligence was nothing compared to Gamamaru's attack. I can only say that this massive amount of fairy chakra was not absorbed in vain. However, although the damage caused by being hit by such a large body is horrific, if it misses, that is another matter. Moreover, for Kingsea, with such a body size, it is a natural target. He can even save the time and energy of locking and aiming. He just needs to attack in any direction. It is difficult to miss. Along with the shining sky blue light, the space in front of Kingsea began to fluctuate slightly. Immediately, countless yin-yang black rods were released from the Takamaji-Ehara space by Kingsea. They were first restored to their original size, and then immediately shot towards the Toadmaru that had just fallen to the ground. Young name Biguna may reign. Gamamaru's huge toad eyes suddenly shrank. As a good brother of Otsutsuki Hago Romo, he knew the effect of the yin-yang release black rod. Although a single yin-yang black stick would have almost no effect on it, if it were hit by such a large number of black sticks, even it would be greatly affected. So, Toad Pill immediately adjusted his posture, put his palms together, and opened his mouth to spit again. Immortal Technique Water-Style Large Iron Cannonball. An ultra-giant water ball, which was several times larger than the previous one, appeared in an instant, and then whizzed away towards the countless yin-yang black sticks that were shot at it. The yin-yang escaped black sticks and the water balls collided in mid-air, making a series of beep sounds of penetration. Although Gamamaru's interception attack failed to completely block all the black sticks, the speed and power of those black sticks that penetrated the water balls were weakened, greatly reducing the threat to Gamamaru. Seeing Gamamaru's response, Kingsea's mouth corners slowly lifted up, outlining a faint smile. This smile is like a ray of golden sunshine that penetrates through layers of dark clouds in winter, emitting a soft and warm light, as if it can melt all the coldness and frost in the world. However, behind this seemingly friendly and gentle smile, there was a chilling murderous intent, just like the sharp ice edges hidden under the ice and snow. Although illuminated by the warm sun, it still exuded a heart-pounding cold breath and endless murderous intent. Chapter 393. It seems that although Gamamaru is very old, his strength and combat experience are still worthy of praise. But so what? Unless you reach the 6 paths level, you are ultimately just a bigger ant. Kingsea's expression straightened, then he clapped his hands, and a large amount of fairy chakra gathered at his throat in an instant. Before trying that trick, let's play with this old thing again. Senjutsu fire style head hard work. 3 fireballs of different sizes, like meteorites burning with flames, suddenly ejected from Kingsea's mouth with extremely hot temperatures. The fireball streaked across the sky, dragging a long tail of flame, and smashed into the ground in front of Toadmaru. The moment it came into contact with the ground, it suddenly exploded, turning into a golden sea of fire, spreading wildly in all directions like a surging wave. Wherever the sea of fire passed, everything was swallowed up, whether it was flowers, trees, rocks, or soil, all were burned to ashes in an instant. The crackling sounds and the whistling sounds of the wind intertwined together to form a terrifying and spectacular movement of destruction, sweeping towards Toadmaru. Gamamaru's pupils shrank unconsciously again. He had taught Otsutsuki Hago Romo how to use magic, and had seen him combine ordinary magic with the power of the 6 paths to sublimate it into the 6 paths magic. He instantly recognized that Seiji's attack was the same 6 paths magic as Otsutsuki Hagoromo's. Gamamaru, who knows the truth about the ninja world, has an extremely clear understanding of the 6 paths sage technique. He knows that the so-called 6 paths sage technique is not just the sage technique used by Otsutsuki Hago Romo, but it got the name because he happened to be the first person to use this power, and later Hago Romo was honored as the 6 paths sage. Its correct meaning should be the power of the 6 paths mastered by Otsutsuki Hago Romo, plus the power of the native fairy arts of the ninja world, which are combined together to form a more powerful force. Therefore, in terms of power level, the 6 paths fairy arts is of course superior to ordinary fairy arts. It is clearly stated in the Book of Formations that the Six Paths Immortal Art is not equal to Immortal Art. The Six Paths Naruto and Six Paths Madara in the original work both used the Six Paths Immortal Art, not ordinary Immortal Art. Of course, correspondingly, having Six Paths level strength does not mean that one must have mastered the Six Paths Immortal Art. As for the power of the Six Paths, to put it simply, it is actually the power brought by the Ten Tails divine tree owned by the Otsutsuki clan. Otsutsuki Hago Romo has the power of the Six Paths because he took away part of the Ten Tails chakra in Kagaya's body. Therefore, with the combination, his fairy art was sublimated into the Six Paths fairy art. As for Kyoshi's side, it is because Kyoshi has a separate small Ten Tails. Of course, the small Ten Tails has evolved after devouring Otsutsuki Urashiki. To be precise, it should be called the Ten Tails. Although Seiji's Ten Tails has not yet transformed into the form of a sacred tree and absorbed the natural energy of the ninja world to produce chakra fruits, and Seiji has not become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, don't forget that Seiji has obtained a lot of chakra from his Ten Tails. Therefore, Ching Si naturally also possesses the power of the Six Paths, and the immortal arts he mastered are also sublimated into the Six Paths immortal arts. So, Gamamaru immediately mobilized a large amount of fairy chakra to prepare to deal with Kingxi's attack. Because it knows that, under the same conditions, the power of its magic is far less than that of Kingxi, so it can only consume a large amount of magic chakra to use a larger scale of magic to offset Kingxi's attack by quantity. Senjutsu Water Style Great Waterfall Technique. Senjutsu Wind Style Uzumaki Jutsu. Combined Immortal Technique, Hurricane Water Vortex Technique. In the end, Gamamaru used a combination of wind and water escape techniques to counter Kingxi's attack. A huge water vortex tornado that connected the sky and the earth was spinning wildly at an astonishing speed, and soon it collided heavily with the raging sea of fire. At the moment of the collision, the entire Miyaboku mountain seemed to be shaken by a powerful force. It trembled violently. Then, where the blue and red lights met, endless brilliant light burst out. Countless water splashed like crystal clear pearls, and the sparks were like stars falling into the mortal world. A large amount of white smoke rose up quickly like surging waves, followed by a violent storm like a hurricane, sweeping out in all directions, plowing the area around where Kingxi and Gamera fought over and over again. Under this strong impact, Todemaru's huge body could not stop retreating repeatedly, leaving a long mark on the ground before he managed to stop retreating. On the other hand, Ching Si was standing leisurely in the air. When the impact came, the Chudeo Jade formed a hemispherical protective shield under his control, blocking the raging storm completely without affecting Ching Si at all. The moment Gamera's body stopped, Kingxi's figure had turned into a blurred afterimage and disappeared from Gamera's sight and perception. Gamamaru thought to himself that something was wrong and hurriedly wanted to leave the place, but how could his movements be faster than Seiji, who was directly transferred here through Takamaji Ehara? With the fluctuation of space, Ching Si appeared at the side of Gamamaru, and then pressed his palm directly on its huge body. Immediately, the fairy chakra that Ching Si had gathered in his palm in advance burst out. Immortal Technique, Divine Aerial Attack. Duan. There was a loud bang, and Toad Pill's body trembled violently, as if it had hit a steel plate, or as if it was hit by an irresistible force, leaving it with no time to react, and it rolled to the side involuntarily. The impact was beyond its physical endurance, causing Gamera's huge body to draw an ugly parabola in the air, then fall heavily to the ground, and continue to roll uncontrollably for a long distance before finally stopping. Before Toad Ball could stabilize its still tumbling body, the ground near it suddenly sank and softened, and in the blink of an eye it turned into a huge swamp. Immortal Technique Earth Release Yellow Spring Marsh. Chapter 394. Toad Pill's movements suddenly came to a halt, its huge body holding it back, causing it to sink deeper and deeper into the swamp. At this time, Kingxi seized the opportunity, grasped the long sword transformed from the Seeking Truth Jade, flashed to the top of Todemaru, and stabbed him with the sword. At this moment, a barely perceptible cunning light of success suddenly flashed in Gamera's huge toad eyes. Then, I saw its mouth opened wide, and then it suddenly let out a loud quack sound, which exploded in the air like thunder. A lightning-fast afterimage flew out of Toad Pill's mouth. It's its tongue. Immortal Technique, Tongue Binding Slash. Gamera's tongue shot out at an astonishing speed, and under the effect of the fairy chakra, it stretched infinitely, like a flexible poisonous snake, winding and dancing in the air, rushing towards Kingxi with a fierce momentum. The tongue strengthened by the fairy chakra flashed across the sky like a flesh-colored lightning, with extreme penetrating power, and hit Kingsee's body at an extremely fast speed. Puff! Before Kingsee could even react, Gamamara's tongue was like an extremely sharp spear, piercing through his body without any hindrance. Scarlet blood splashed wantonly in the air, colliding and blending with each other, gathering into a thick blood mist, like a blood-colored flower blooming in the air, and like a layer of red gauze, incomparably enchanting. After scoring a goal with one strike, Gamamaru immediately revealed a proud smile. The Otsutsuki clan was no better than him, and it turned out that it was still as powerful as ever. However, just when Gamamaru thought he had successfully killed Kingsee and relaxed. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of smoke exploding, Kingsee, who was pierced by Toadmara's tongue in mid-air, suddenly turned into a handful of white smoke and dissipated. At the same time, another Kingsee suddenly appeared on the right side of Toadmaru, took a breath, and his cheeks puffed up slightly. Shadow clone! Gamamaru was shocked and hurriedly tried to retract his extended tongue. But how could Kingsee give it this opportunity? Senjutsu. Storm release. Light Fang. A deep purple laser suddenly shot out from Kingsee's mouth, and then with Kingsee's slight head movement, it cut off Gamamara's tongue at the root before he could retract it. For a moment, huge handfuls of bright red blood spurted out from the severed end of Toad Ball's tongue, drawing arcs in the air before falling like raindrops. Toad Pill, who was suddenly hit hard, let out a shrill and painful scream. Looking at the miserable state of Gamamaru, Kingsee showed a satisfied smile. This was just a little bit of interest. However, this old toad is worthy of being the ancestor of my Bokuzen. It is the first time that Kingsee has seen a defense that even the Divine Sky Strike cannot completely penetrate. It seems that the huge amount of fairy chakra it has absorbed into its body has greatly strengthened its body, which has improved its body's defense capabilities by more than one level. However, it was not a big problem. At most, he would just be a more resistant target. Besides, Kingsee had already sensed the arrival of his eldest son. Now, he can finally try that interesting technique. Let him also experience the happiness of Senjo Hashirama in the past and Uchiha Madara not long ago. Kingsee ignored Toadmaru, who was wailing in the distance because his tongue was cut off, and slowly landed on the ground. At this time, Hibai-Zetsu just emerged from the ground using the Mayfly technique. Kingsee nodded at Black Zetsu, expressing his approval of his quick victory in clearing out Mount Myaboku, and then he signaled Black Zetsu and Black Zetsu to come to him. Next, the moves he wanted to try required the cooperation of Black and White Zetsu. Although Kingsee could use it alone, after all, he had his own 10 tails to study, and he had seen Uchiha Madara use it, as well as all the techniques obtained from Black and White Zetsu. But after all, this was his first time using it, and it would be more comfortable with the cooperation of Black and White Zetsu. After completing the preliminary preparations, Kingsee clasped his hands together and the fairy chakra burst out instantly. Senjutsu would release Woodman technique. Due to Gamamara's huge body, Kingsee did not choose to start with the Wood Dragon technique, but instead directly used the Wooden Man technique. Then, let's get started. Standing on top of the Wooden Man, Ching Si smiled brilliantly. This scale of technique was indeed very satisfying. Old man. Now we are evenly matched in size. The Wooden Man was equally huge, even slightly larger than Gamamaru. It was like a moving mountain. Under Kingsee's control, it took heavy and powerful steps and strode towards Gamamaru with great momentum. Every step it took seemed to trigger a small earthquake. The ground shook violently, and dust flew and gravel splashed everywhere. As the Wooden Man charged, the surrounding air was stirred into strong air currents that swept past with a whistling sound, making a deafening roar. This is Wood Release. Gamamaru, who was in pain, was shocked again when he saw the woodman approaching him quickly. The Otsutsuki who invaded Myaboku Mountain was like a second six-path sage. Every move and every style had the style of the ninja world, and some were even techniques that only existed in the ninja world. It was completely different from the information about the Otsutsuki clan that Hago Romo had told him. However, it was not too afraid of the Wooden Man as it was just a wooden man. Although the Wooden Man was bigger than it, the huge amount of fairy chakra in its body, which was almost stored in Myaboku Mountain for 1,000 years, was no joke. So, Gamamaru quickly took out a piece of talisman paper filled with fairy chakra and put it in his mouth. It was the immortal talisman that gave Gamamaru the confidence to rebuild the Myaboku Mountain after the battle with Ciji. As extremely pure Senjutsu chakra burst out in Gamamara's mouth, its tongue that was cut off by Kingxi began to heal and regenerate rapidly under the nourishment of this Senjutsu chakra. In just a blink of an eye, it was restored to its original state. Chapter 395. Immediately, Gamamaru opened his mouth, and a huge torrent of fairy chakra poured out of his mouth. Immortal technique water release big explosive water wave. The water vapor in the space of Myaboku mountain was constantly gathered under the effect of Gamamara's magic. The surging and endless torrent roared like a ferocious beast. The huge water waves, with endless resistance and power, fiercely hit the wooden man that Kingxi was controlling. The impact force created by the raging flood hit the wooden man wave after wave. Each impact was like a heavy hammer hitting him, causing the wooden man's body to tremble and shake constantly, making it very difficult to move. When Gamamaru saw that its response was effective, it immediately gathered its fairy chakra in its legs, then jumped forward, and rushed towards Kingxi above the wooden man's head like a cannonball. Senjutsu, Frog Q Might. This is Myabokuzen's unique way of using natural energy, known as an invisible attack. Gamamaru wants to use this unique attack mode to sneak attack CG. Seeing Gamamara's confident punch, Kingxi had no idea what the other party was up to, so he flew directly from the top of the wooden man and avoided Gamamara's punch. I succeeded. Gamamaru was excited. Although his punch landed in the air, he seemed to have seen the fist formed by invisible natural energy in the air, which would knock Kingxi away in the next second. However, Gamamaru was destined to be disappointed again. Although it was acquainted with Otsutsuki Hamura, it had never seen Hamura's Rinnegan, let alone understood it. In addition, Otsutsuki Hamura had never mentioned any information related to the Rinnegan to it. Therefore, not only did it fail to recognize Seiji's Rinnegan, it also knew nothing about its abilities. It had no idea at all that the flow of natural energy, which it thought was hidden, was clearly visible to Kingxi's reincarnated eyes. As a result, Toad Pill was in trouble immediately. After Kingxi figured out Gamamara's little thoughts, he dodged the Frog Q Might attack with a quick move, and his Samsara eye lit up slightly. Samsaranga eye, pressure. The overwhelming pressure came instantly, causing Gamamaru to lose control of his body briefly. Immediately afterwards, Kingxi used an earth-splitting kick to kick Gamamaru back at a faster speed, and crashed him into the mountain in the distance. Then, Kingxi fell back onto the wooden man's head and took a deep breath. Immortal technique fire escape great fire extinction. A huge golden flame rushed straight towards Toad Maru. Wherever the flame passed, the air became extremely distorted. Gamamaru started with difficulty, adjusted his posture, and fired several consecutive iron cannonballs, offsetting Kingxi's attack. Where the water ball and the flame collided, large patches of white high-temperature steam rose. Ching Si curled his lips. It seemed that ordinary magic could not do anything to this old thing. However, he had enough fun and did not plan to continue to tangle with this old toad. Well, let's use this move to end the battle. A strong murderous intent flashed in Kingxi's eyes. The next second, the immense amount of fairy chakra seemed to be free of charge and poured madly into the wooden man under his feet. At the same time, Kingxi raised his hands and put his palms together. Immortal technique would release true thousands of hands. With the influx of a large amount of fairy chakra, the wooden man seemed to be stimulated by something. The originally rough and dull surface of the wood began to tremble slightly. Then, a dazzling blue-green light burst out from its inside and quickly spread to the entire body of the wooden man. Under the shining light, the wooden man's already huge body began to grow again. In the blink of an eye, its height exceeded the 1 kilometer mark, and then it turned into a huge Buddha statue that was over 1,000 meters high, like a giant mountain towering into the clouds standing between heaven and earth. The sky of Myabokuzen. It got dark. The smoke produced by the collision of the water ball and the flame suddenly dissipated due to the appearance of the 1,000-armed Buddha statue. When the smoke dissipated, the terrifying Buddha statue that connected the sky and the earth and blocked out the sun appeared in front of Toad Pill's eyes, which made him dumbfounded and shocked. Ah! The 1,000-armed Buddha statue just sits there quietly, its face kind and solemn, its eyes gently closed, as if it is in deep thought, or immersed in some deep and tranquil state. The slightly upturned corners of its mouth outline a faint smile, looking extremely peaceful. On its broad back, there are countless arms, densely arranged together, creating a terrifying visual impact that shocks the soul. These arms are all carefully carved from wood, but they are by no means as fragile and breakable as ordinary wood. On the contrary, they look as solid as rock and hard as steel, exuding a cold and tough texture. A faint, almost imperceptible sound of Buddhist chanting seemed to be echoing throughout the entire Myaboku mountain space. However, the peaceful atmosphere emanating from the thousand-armed Buddha statue was only for Kingsley. On the other hand, Gamamaru, who was facing the Buddha statue directly, was so frightened by its terrifying aura that his whole body became stiff and he stood there in a daze. Although Gamamaru's body is already very large, it still looks extremely small compared to the towering thousand-armed Buddha statue, just like a young child standing in front of a tall adult. At this moment, Todemaru, who was being looked down upon by the thousand-armed Buddha, had deep fear in his eyes. His gaze kept trembling, revealing his extreme inner anxiety. Of course it knew what this move was. After all, it had seen the battle between Otsutsuki Hagoromo's two sons through the crystal ball and the telescope technique passed down from Mount Myaboku 1,000 years ago. But it never expected that the Otsutsuki who invaded Mount Myaboku would not only use wood release, but would even be able to use this terrifying move. The feeling of fear surged into Gamamaru's heart like a tide, making it almost impossible for him to breathe. Gamamaru knew that he could not block this move. Kingsley looked down at Gamamaru's ever-changing expression, revealing a cruel sneer and an irrepressible desire to kill. Old toad, your death is coming. Become a Buddha on top. Chapter 396. Kingsley, standing on the top of the thousand-armed Buddha, took a deep breath. The next moment, accompanied by a flash of blue-green chakra light, the literally thousands of arms behind the thousand-armed Buddha instantly turned into countless fist shadows that were blurred due to the fast speed, and smashed towards the tiny Todemaru below. The wind from the fist whizzed past, bringing with it gusts of sharp airflow. Wherever it passed, the air was torn apart, making a sharp and piercing explosion, as if a towering mountain had collapsed, or the earth had suddenly split open into a bottomless ravine. The sound of thousands of arms punching together was extremely powerful. When the fists containing tremendous power were swung out and smashed down, it seemed as if the entire space of Myaboku mountain shook. Gamamaru relied on his strong will to pass on Mount Myaboku and forced himself out of his state of fear. His huge toad eyes revealed an extreme madness, and his eyeballs were spinning rapidly and madly, like two burning fireballs, emitting terrifyingly high temperatures. The surrounding air seemed to be ignited, with wisps of heat waves. Quack! A deafening roar suddenly sounded, filled with endless anger and deep unwillingness, as if it wanted to completely release all the resentment and anger accumulated in its heart through this roar. Then, Gamamaru once again raised his head and opened his mouth to face the thousand-armed Buddha. In the very center of his mouth, a twisted black vortex appeared, as gloomy and deep as an endless black hole. All the immortal chakra in Gamamaru's body burned up. Facing the Buddha on the top, it fought desperately. Immortal technique, toad mouth binding technique. As the founder of Mount Myaboku, it would of course also use the signature barrier technique of the Otsutsuki Great Toad. However, this technique was not just an ordinary barrier, but a barrier with a sealing effect. Moreover, it did not lead to the stomach and intestines of the Otsutsuki Great Toad. After all, the Otsutsuki Great Toad had been killed by Kingsley, but to a separate different space. In the direction where the black hole was pointing, the normally flowing time seemed to stop suddenly, and the space froze into ice in an instant. The tiny grains of sand that were lifted into the air by the collision of the battle were stagnant as if under a confinement spell. The even finer dust was also motionless like a sculpture. The trees that had survived the aftermath of the battle not far from the battlefield were now like petrified, losing their vitality. Even the shattered fragments of the earth were frozen in mid-air. Then, a series of horrifying cracking sounds suddenly rang out, like the groan of a devil. Where the two sides fought, countless cracks began to appear in the ground and spread at an alarming speed. As the cracks continued to expand and deepen, huge and heavy rocks suddenly protruded from the ground, and seemed to have lost gravity, slowly floating into the air, and then were sucked away by the strong suction in Todemaru's big mouth like an arrow. The remaining trees were not spared either. They were uprooted by an irresistible force and were swept into this strange storm along with the soil and dead branches and leaves, roaring towards the direction of Todemaru. The unparalleled suction force generated by the sealing technique is like an invisible giant hand, ruthlessly tearing apart all objects around it, whether they are rocks or trees. Even the air cannot escape its control. Under the effect of suction, visible spatial ripples spread out like water waves, constantly shaking the entire Myaboku mountain space. This is the strongest sealing technique performed by Gamamaru using all the Senjutsu chakra in his body. Chapter 397. The wooden arm that fell first, and the sonic booms it produced when it fell, were all attracted to the barrier opened in Todemaru's mouth, and the moment they came into contact with the black vortex, they were directly swallowed up and sealed without causing any ripples. Black waves spread out in the void like ripples, and the surrounding space and time began to constantly distort and deform. The terrifying suction force generated by the sealing technique was like a ferocious beast opening its bloody mouth, ruthlessly pulling everything nearby. Moreover, the closer they got to the black vortex in Gamamara's mouth, the more severe the distortion of time and space became. The space of Myaboku Mountain, which was already unstable due to the fight between CG and Gamamaru, was now as if being kneaded by a pair of invisible giant hands, constantly folding and squeezing, and it seemed that it would completely collapse at any time and turn into chaos. Sealing technique, and barrier. Looking at Gamamara's dying struggle, King C curled his lips in disdain. Ha! Useless struggle. You know nothing about my power. At this moment, King C's face seemed to be covered with frost, with no expression at all. In his sky-blue eyes as deep as a pool of water, the murderous intent became more and more intense, constantly flashing with an extremely cold light. Freeze! Along with a low shout that echoed throughout the entire Myaboku mountain space, a dazzling sky-blue light instantly bloomed in King C's eyes. Immediately, the space that had been shaking due to Gamamara's sealing technique was suddenly frozen. Immediately afterwards, the terrifying pupil power that was as real as substance gushed out and exploded from the reincarnation eye like a surging tide, and an incomparably surging and majestic pressure instantly descended on Gamamara's body. Samsaranga eye, pressure. Toad Ball's body suddenly sank, as if being pressed down by a mountain weighing 10,000 pounds. At this moment, he was unable to move at all. The sealing technique it used with all its might was immediately interrupted. The next moment, more arms appeared like waves, one higher than the other, densely packed and overwhelming, with unmatched terrifying power, and smashed towards Toad Pill madly with overwhelming force. The whistling sound continued, and in the blink of an eye, Gamamara's huge body was submerged by endless wooden arms. When the first arm hit Toad Pill's body, its scream of pain could still be heard. But when the second, third, and even more arms came hitting it as densely and violently as raindrops, no sound could be heard from Toad Pill anymore. All that was left was the sharp explosion caused by the bombardment of the wooden arms, and the chopping sound like meat being beaten on a chopping board. The Buddha's arms were like a dragnet, covering the toad ball tightly, leaving it with nowhere to escape. Of course, it didn't have the strength to escape. Once it was hit by the first arm, its fate was already sealed. King C stood on the top of the 1,000-armed Buddha, watching Gamamaru struggling in pain with indifference and calmness. Its huge body was like a building that was about to collapse, and it was shaky like a candle in the wind. Its eyes, which were no longer cloudy because their condition had returned to its peak, were now dim and unclear again, like two dusty gems that had lost their former dazzling brilliance. Under the attack of the Buddha on the top, the fairy chakra in Gamamara's body began to dissipate continuously, and its aura became increasingly weak. Its skin, which had been tense due to the absorption of a large amount of fairy chakra, also relaxed again, and a feeling of weakness and old age appeared on its body. The beating of Gamamara's heart was getting slower and slower. The overflow of fairy chakra caused the vitality in its body to quickly dissipate. Its life fire was already like a candle in the wind. Soon, Gamamaru, who had lost his extraordinary physical defense due to the dispersion of his fairy chakra, was smashed into a bloody mess by King C using the 1,000-armed Buddha. The founder of Myaboku Mountain, the great toad sage, Gamamaru, who stirred up the situation with his own strength 1,000 years ago and bewitched Otsutsuki Hago Romo and his mother Kagaya to become enemies, died. Chapter 398. The chaotic and restless chakra gradually calmed down, and a huge irregular deep pit with potholes appeared where Gamamaru was originally. The attack of Top Buddha not only smashed Gamamaru to pieces, but also smashed a deep dent in the land, as if it had been hit by a comet. At this time, Myaboku Mountain, the paradise that was once full of vitality and belonged to the toads, has been completely changed. The thick, impermeable smoke enveloped the earth like a rolling dark cloud. The air was also filled with a strong smell of blood, and one could smell the scent of death with every breath. Looking from a high place, all you can see is a miserable scene, with broken walls, raging fires, and countless dead toads lying in disarray on the charred ground. The blood gathered into a river, flowing slowly, dyeing the uneven land of Myaboku Mountain, which was uneven due to the battle, into a shocking red. The entire Myaboku Mountain was like a terrible nightmare, utterly silent, without even a trace of the peaceful and tranquil toad paradise of the past. King C released the Rinnegan Chakram mode and the true 1,000 hands, jumped down from the air, and landed next to Todemaru, who was being turned into a pulp by the Buddha on the top, with a look of revengeful satisfaction on his face. Before releasing Kagaya from the seal, let him, as a husband, collect part of the interest first to release some of the anger in his heart. As for the culprit who sealed Kagaya with her own hands, the rebellious son Otsutsuki Hago Romo, let's wait for Kagaya to break the seal and then play mixed doubles together. Of course, as for the other Otsutsuki Hamura, although CG knew clearly from his words that he was just a little brother without his own opinion, and his impression of him was not too bad, but since he dared to attack Kagaya, he was bound to be beaten. Black Zetsu, who had already separated from Kingxi, revealed a slightly complicated expression on his dark face. With the help of his father, he was finally able to settle some of the hatred for his mother. Moreover, his 1,000-year-old wish was getting closer and closer to success thanks to his father's planning. Kingxi walked slowly forward, stepping on the dirty flesh mud that had almost melted into one with the earth, and came to the very center of the pit. There was a huge blue gem with the word oil engraved on it. It was the one that Gamamaru had worn around his neck before. Under the terrifying attack of the Buddha on the top, the gem did not break into pieces, but was only covered with a large number of cracks on the surface. Kingxi walked up to the oil gem and looked at the blue gem, which was almost the same size as him. There was a hint of inquiry in his eyes. The material of this gem was indeed very strong. Although it was much smaller than Gamamaru and did not withstand many attacks from the 1,000-armed Buddha, it was still able to maintain the integrity of the sphere without breaking under the Buddha on the top, which was indeed commendable. According to Kingxi's analysis, this blue gem should be made of a special chakra ore that is extremely scarce in the ninja world, and it was nurtured over thousands of years by Myaboku Mountain, which intercepted a large amount of natural energy belonging to the ninja world and created a space with extremely rich natural energy. Suddenly, Kingxi, who was observing the orb carefully, changed his expression, and an expression of surprise could not help showing on his face. Through careful observation with the samsara eye, he discovered the prophetic power with time and space properties sealed in the blue orb by the old man Gamamaru. It seems that the treasure plough that Sanzu Amato has not been able to find a way to repair has finally got hope of being restored. At this time, Kingxi was extremely grateful. If the material of the orb was not strong enough, it would have barely survived the attack of the Buddha on the top. Otherwise, if the orb was really broken, the power of time and space sealed in it would not have been discovered by him, but would have dissipated along with Gamamaru. However, before that, we still have to deal with Myaboku Mountain first. After forming the seal with both hands, Kingxi pressed his right hand directly to the ground. Psychic art. An extremely huge black spiritual formation instantly appeared on the ground, and then thick white smoke rose up, accompanied by an excited roar. The one summoned by Kingxi was the 10 tails that belonged to him. After the Toad clan was destroyed, Mount Myaboku was ownerless, and the natural energy that had been intercepted from the ninja world for thousands of years, as well as the massive amount of senjutsu chakra that had just overflowed from Gamamaru's body, became Seiji's spoils of war. Although what Myaboku-san is doing is to dig up the roots of the ninja world and make the natural energy in the ninja world increasingly thin, but for Seiji, this is really a pillow when he is sleepy, which is a good thing for his 10 tails. Such a large amount of natural energy and fairy chakra is enough to greatly shorten the time it takes for the 10 tails to produce its first chakra fruit after it transforms into a sacred tree. Leaving the 10 tails behind at Myaboku Mountain to continue absorbing natural energy and fairy chakra, Seiji left with the black and white Zetsu, the blue orb he had stored in the Takamaji-Ehara space, and some barely intact toad corpses. The blue orb was used to try to repair the noble phantasm plough, while the toad's corpse was prepared by Seiji for his disciple Nagato. Aren't these huge toad corpses the best medium for Nagato to display the ability of the animal path? Presumably, these toads, which are already quite powerful, with the blessing of the ability of the animal path, will be able to play a huge role in the upcoming Ninja World War. Chapter 399. The 10 tails was constantly swallowing and absorbing energy in the space of Mount Myaboku. As a large amount of natural energy was drawn away, the remaining trees began to gradually wither. Leaves fell off the trees and turned into a pile of grey powder, which was blown away by the wind and never disappeared again. The originally vibrant space of Myaboku Mountain is losing its green color, which symbolizes life and hope, at an extremely exaggerated speed. The stream that once flowed happily has now dried up, leaving only cracked riverbeds. Even the clouds in the sky seem to have been affected, no longer as white as snow, but gradually tinged with a grey hue. The wild sand on the ground was constantly lifted up and scattered. In the blink of an eye, all the vitality contained in the land near the 10 Tails was plundered by it, turning it into a desert, and it continued to spread in all directions. The whole space is filled with the breath of death. To Cg, Mayaboku Mountain was of no value after his 10 Tails drained it dry. Because Mayaboku Mountain not only belongs to a separate different space, but in order to intercept the natural energy of the ninja world, Gamamaru also set up a special barrier seal at the connection between the Mayaboku Mountain space and the ninja world. Therefore, no matter how the 10 Tails sucks, it will not have any impact on the ninja world. Perhaps, this is the only right thing that the old man Toad Pill has done. Otherwise, if the space where Mayaboku Mountain is located is still connected to the ninja world normally, the 10 Tails would not be able to suck as recklessly and wantonly as it does now. After all, the nursery still needs to be well taken care of, and we can't drain the pond to catch all the fish. In Konoha village, Jiraiya, who was visiting Minato Namikaze's house, suddenly changed his expression along with Minato Namikaze who was sitting in front of him. At this moment, both of them felt a palpitation, as if something extremely closely related to them had just disappeared. Jiraiya and Minato Namikaze looked at each other solemnly, and then they subconsciously said anxiously in unison, Mayaboku Mountain. After all, the only place that could make the two of them feel lost and was related to both of them was Mayaboku Mountain, where both the master and the disciple had a spiritual contract. So, Jiraiya immediately formed seals with his hands and slapped the ground, eager to deny the most extreme guess in his mind. Psychic art. However, the result was ultimately disappointing to Jiraiya and Minato Namikaze. The summoning circle appeared normally, and the white smoke produced by the summoning also appeared normally. The only thing that did not appear normally was the scroll toad that Jiraiya wanted to summon. Jiraiya suddenly panicked and hurriedly continued to make hand seals, preparing to change another toad to summon the spirit. Seeing this, Minato Namikaze, who was standing by, also hurriedly used the summoning technique and, together with Jiraiya, summoned all the toads in Mayaboku Mountain that could respond to the summoning technique one by one. However, no matter how the two tried, no toad was able to respond to their spiritual communication. Jiraiya and Minato Namikaze's expressions became more and more ugly. They looked at each other again, and each other's eyes were filled with bitterness, horror, and disbelief. The result they were most reluctant to believe came true. Jiraiya sat on the ground in a trance. Compared to Minato Namikaze, the feelings between him and Mount Mayaboku were much deeper. After all, ever since he mistakenly used the summoning technique and got himself to Mount Mayaboku, his fate and Mount Mayaboku could be said to be closely linked together. To him, the toads of all sizes in Mayaboku Mountain are more than just summoning beasts and fighting partners. After spending a long time together, a deep and inseparable bond has developed between the toads and Jiraiya. Not to mention, the two sages, Fukasaku and Shima, can be regarded as the masters who taught him how to use the sage mode. Moreover, his sage mode still requires the help of these two great sages. Now, the two great sages and Mount Mayaboku are gone. What should he do? What's more important is that over the years, he has been searching for the trace of the Child of Prophecy in the ninja world because of the prophecy of the Great Toad Sage about the Child of Destiny. Although he learned from the Great Toad Sage that the prophecy had changed and that it was too late for the Child of Destiny to lead the change in the ninja world when he was called to Mayaboku last time, how could he just let go of something he had persisted in for so many years? However, now, Mount Mayaboku is gone, and the Great Toad Sage is also gone. For Jiraiya, this is equivalent to everything becoming empty. It can be said to be a devastating blow like the collapse of faith. At this moment, Jiraiya's mind was churning with thoughts, and he also recalled what the Great Toad Sage had told him last time about the blurry white figure that disrupted the original course of history in the ninja world. Could it be him? Who is the true identity of this blurry white figure? Jiraiya's heart was in constant pain and he fell into deep thought. Minato Namikaze standing by was not in a much better condition either. Although he did not collapse to this extent as Jiraiya, after confirming the destruction of Mount Mayaboku, Minato Namikaze also looked extremely dazed. His face, which had been as cheerful as the little sun, was now filled with an undisguised sadness. After all, because of his personality, there were many toads in Mayaboku Mountain who were his very close fighting partners. Now, all these partners are gone. This is a huge blow to Minato Namikaze, who values his companions very much. Uzumaki Kushina, who was cooking in the kitchen, heard the sound of smoke coming from the summoning technique in the living room. She couldn't help but stop stir-frying and went to the living room curiously to see what Minato Namikaze and Jiraiya were doing. But when she came to the living room, all she saw were two salted fish that seemed to have lost hope, lying on the ground with lifeless eyes. So, the startled Uzumaki Kushina didn't bother to go back to the kitchen to finish the meal she was cooking, but rushed directly to the two of them. Minato. Teacher Jiraiya. What's wrong with you? Chapter 400. Kingxi has already returned to the Hidden Mist Village with Black and White Zetsu. Black Zetsu, who had destroyed Miyaboku Mountain with his own hands and vented his anger, was in extremely high spirits at this moment. Without Kingxi saying much, he pulled White Zetsu with him and continued to go out to explore the specific location of Ryokai Cave and Wet Bone Forest. Although after finding the locations of Ryokai Cave and Wet Bone Forest, his father alone was enough to destroy these two holy places, but as Kagaya's child, he, Black Zetsu, must also help out. After Black Zetsu took White Zetsu away, Kyoji handed the toad corpse he brought back to his disciple Nagato, and then went directly to the new laboratory. He couldn't wait to try and see if he could completely repair the treasure plough with the help of the blue gem he brought back from Mount Maiboku. Although he will be repelled from the past time and space if his strength does not improve due to the influence of Otsutsuki Urashiki's final eye technique, he is unwilling to believe in evil and still wants to use the treasure plough to try and see if he can return to the time point he left 1,000 years ago. He missed Kagaya a little. Moreover, once he can successfully go back 1,000 years ago, he can eat a chakra fruit, complete the bloodline network, and then return to the present era. In this way, he no longer has to worry about the rebellious son Otsutsuki Hago Romo and continue with various plans. He can directly free his Kagaya from the Seal of Six Paths Chibaku Tensei. The new location of the Hidden Mist Village Laboratory. Kingxi's figure slowly emerged from the void. The original laboratory was destroyed in the war that broke out when Otsutsuki Urashiki came to snatch the treasure plough. Therefore, after the war, the Hidden Mist Village built a new scientific research laboratory in another hidden location. Because Kingxi did not conceal his breath and figure, Sanzu Amato, who was researching new chakra technology in the innermost laboratory, was soon notified by the Anbu ninja in charge of guarding the laboratory. Amato. How is the research on plough going? After meeting Amato Sanzu, Kingxi did not exchange too many pleasantries or greetings with him, but asked directly to the point. After hearing this, Amato immediately had a bitter smile on his face. Although he claimed to be a genius in research and was confident that he was the current #1 in the ninja world, without anything to refer to, he really couldn't figure out how to repair the plough which had a problem and could not be started. After all, the direction of space-time ability was something he had never explored before, and the technology used by the Otsutsuki clan to create the noble phantasm plough was far beyond the current technology of the ninja world. Therefore, Sanzu Amato was completely powerless. He had tried all the methods he could think of, but the noble phantasm plough still showed no signs of being repaired. Not very optimistic, Mizukage-sama. Sanzu Amato shook his head slightly and answered nervously, I have tried all the possible methods, but none of them worked. Sanzu Amato felt very guilty and frustrated for not being able to complete the task assigned by Kyoji and for not being able to provide effective help to the Mizukage, whom he loved and respected the most. Seeing Sanzu Amato's frustrated look, Kingxi smiled helplessly and patted him on the shoulder gently, okay. Since there is no result, let's put it aside for now. Don't think too much about it. After all, it is something from the Starry Sky Otsutsuki clan. It is normal that you can't research it. Indeed, Kyoji originally did not have much hope for this. After all, the technology in the ninja world was not even close to that of the Otsutsuki clan. At that time, he just thought that maybe it could work, so he gave it to Amato for research. Now, with the blue gem he got from Mount Maiboku, CG has some confidence in repairing the treasure plough, so there is no need for Amato to continue the research. After hearing Kyoji's comforting words, although Sanzu Amato was still a little unwilling, he accepted Kyoji's advice. After all, he was still young, and he would have plenty of opportunities to study time and space in the future. Moreover, with the invincible Mizukage around, he would have plenty of opportunities to study the Otsutsuki clan's technologies in the future. At this moment, Sanzu Amato seemed to suddenly remember something. Oh, right. Mizukage-sama. A while ago, Chino-sama gave me the pair of Mangeki Sharingan that you obtained that year. Oh. Kingxi became interested instantly after hearing this. He had a premonition that Amato would bring him good news. You once said that the original owner of Nagato's Samsara Eye was Uchiha Madara, and that the Samsara Eye evolved from the Sharingan after Uchiha Madara gained the power of Hashirama Senju. Sanzu Amato explained, after my research over this period of time, I have found some commonalities between the Sharingan and the Samsara Eye. Therefore, I am now very confident that I can let Nagato absorb the pupil power of the pair of Mangeki Sharingan. King C's eyes suddenly lit up. This was indeed good news. Once Nagato is able to absorb all the power in the Mangeki Sharingan, his strength will be greatly enhanced. With the assistance of Black Zetsu, he will almost be able to unlock the Six Paths Chibaku Tensei together with CG. With that, all the preparations to release Kaguya from her seal were complete. However, Kyoji does not have enough confidence now to match the rebellious son who has already achieved the Kekii network. After all, Otsutsuki Hago Romo is not as weak as Otsutsuki Urashiki. As a member of the same Kekii network and having mastered the Six Paths Senjutsu, Otsutsuki Hago Romo is powerful enough to crush Otsutsuki Urashiki. Therefore, King C's strength needs to be further improved, at least to be able to compete with the rebellious son. Because once Kaguya breaks the seal and comes out, the rebellious son Otsutsuki Hago Romo will react immediately and will definitely show up to stop her. Therefore, Kyoji needs to have enough power to stop Otsutsuki Hago Romo and buy enough time for Kaguya, who has just broken the seal, to absorb the outer path demon statue that Kyoji has prepared for her in advance, so as to restore some of her peak power. And this is King C's complete plan to unblock Kaguya. Chapter 401. After finishing the conversation with Sanzu Amato, Kyoji left the Kirigakure laboratory with his noble phantasm plow. Afterwards, Kyoji did not return to the Mizu Cage building, but directly used the eye technique Takamaji Ehara and went to his own different space, ready to try the blue gem's repair effect on the treasure plow. When Ching Si placed the treasure plow and the blue gem engraved with the word oil together, the treasure plow that had been silent for a long time finally responded. A faint green light suddenly appeared on the surface of the treasure plow. Then, the noble phantasm plow showed its true turtle form, and a mechanical voice came out of it. Authentication activated. I am the noble phantasm plow. When King C saw this, his expression suddenly became excited. As expected, what he thought was right. The prophecy and the power of time and space left by the old toad in the blue orb could repair the treasure plow. However, within a few seconds, the green light emitted by the noble phantasm plow faded away. King C frowned slightly, opened his Rinnegan, and carefully observed the treasure plow and the blue orb. Under the vision of the Rinnegan, he could clearly see that the faint fluctuations of time and space were constantly being transmitted from the blue orb to the treasure plow. I see. King C sighed softly. The prophecy and the power of time and space in the blue orb can indeed repair the treasure plow, but as a treasure of the Otsutsuki clan, the plow also belongs to the Six Paths level if it is divided into levels, and the old toad in Miyaboku Mountain is at best only close to the Six Paths level in strength. Therefore, the prophecy and the power of time and space left by the old toad are not qualitatively sufficient, and can only be repaired slowly by accumulating quantity and relying on time. According to King C's observation of the progress of the repair of the noble phantasm plow, it will take about half a month. A week later, the time came to the beginning of the 45th year of Kirigakure. During this period, several large-scale battles involving more than 1,000 ninjas broke out between the Sand Village and the Konoha Village at Kikyo Mountain on the border of the Land of Fire, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. At the same time, upon learning of the outbreak of the war, the Uegakure village and the Kumigakure village also began to stir. They continued to deploy troops to the border, acting as if they might join the war at any time. The situation on the ninja continent is becoming increasingly tense. A larger-scale storm that will sweep across the entire ninja continent may break out at any time. It is worth mentioning that Raza, who has the same magnet-style Kekii Genkai as the third Kazekage Tessa, demonstrated the dominance of magnet style in large-scale ninja wars on the battlefield. In addition, he also has the strength to suppress the one-tailed Shikaku of the Sand Village in the desert. Therefore, 5 days after the war broke out, after discussion among the top leaders of the Sand Village, Raza was appointed to become the fourth Kazekage of the Sand Village, and succeeded the advisory elder Cho, taking full responsibility for the Sand Village's war against Konoha. In addition, there is the Sand Village's Scorch Release Ninja Yekara. After the first major battle when the war broke out, her strength improved and she officially became a cage-level powerhouse. And with the lethality of Scorch Release, she was like a burning flame on the battlefield, galloping across the battlefield with the force of thunder. Countless scorching fireballs surrounding her burned away all the moisture in the bodies of the Konoha ninjas in an instant, turning them into mummies. On the Konoha side, there was only one cage-level strongman, Orochimaru, at the beginning. With the help of the deterrence of the giant summoning beast Manda from Ryokai Cave on the battlefield, he barely blocked the siege of Raza and Yekura on his own. The other Cho was resisted by the Inoshika-Jo combination of Nara Shikaku, Yamanaka Inoichi, and Akimichi Choza. But when Yekang's strength reached the level of Kage, Konoha's defense line suddenly collapsed. On the battlefield, the overwhelming magnetic release, gold sand entangled Orochimaru and Manda. At the same time, Chiyo's Chikamatsu Ten also held back Ino, Shika, and Jo. The unattended Yekura was like a tiger rushing down a mountain, and fiercely crashed into the formation of Konoha's ninjas. Her figure was twisting and turning, and fireballs of burning release scattered out, constantly taking the lives of Konoha's ninjas. Everywhere she passed was scorched black by the high temperature, and it wasn't long before she broke through Konoha's defense line. Konoha was losing ground on the battlefield until the arrival of support from Jiraiya and Minato Namikaze. At this time, Konoha and Tsunagakure each had 3 cage-level warriors. Although Minato Namikaze's Flying Thunder God Jutsu was a powerful weapon for harvesting on the battlefield, he could not go to the battlefield and kill indiscriminately when the high-end combat power of both sides was equal. On the Sand Village side, the only remaining cage-level strongman Ebizo is responsible for guarding against the sudden end of the Uegakure village, while Konoha also needs to be vigilant about the actions of Uegakure and Kumigakure and is unable to send more ninjas to support the front line. Therefore, the two sides were deadlocked near Kodan Mountain for a while. In order to break the stalemate, the Sand Village top leaders decided to release their ultimate weapon, the one-tailed Shikaku, on the battlefield after a fierce dispute. For the high-ranking officials of Tsunagakure, the Jinchuriki is merely a tool to carry Shikaku's power. Anyway, the Jinchuriki, Monk Banfuku, will not live long, so why not let him make one last contribution to Tsunagakure? As for the death of the Jinchuriki, the tailed beasts will also die with him. Of course, the Tsunagakure high-level officials will not ignore this, because they did not intend to let Bunfuku fight. Instead, they were preparing to unseal Shikaku, the one-tailed beast, and release it directly on the battlefield. Then after the war, the 4th Kazekage, Raza, recovered Shikaku, brought him back to the Sand Village and sealed him up again. Of course, after the one-tail Shikaku appears, he will definitely indiscriminately kill the Sand Village and Konoha ninjas. Therefore, it depends on Raza's ability to coordinate and the timing of releasing Shikaku. Even so, there will still be Tsunagaku ninjas who will be accidentally injured by Shikaku due to their slow retreat, but in order to win the war with Konoha, these are necessary efforts and sacrifices. Chapter 402. On the other hand, the Konoha village is waiting for Minato Namikaze to increase his strength. Originally, Minato Namikaze's further development of the Flying Thunder God technique was almost completed, and after experiencing a series of battles, his understanding of the Flying Thunder God technique became more and more profound. Soon, Minato Namikaze developed the application of the Flying Thunder God / based on the Flying Thunder God / left by the second Hokage Senju Tobirama, which allowed him not only to instantly move to the Flying Thunder God mark in mid-flight, but also to transfer space while using ninjutsu. Therefore, in the next decisive battle that is about to break out, both the Sand Village and the Konoha village are full of confidence, confident that they can decide the outcome of this war in one battle. However, how could the information about the Sand Village's decision to send out the Jinchuriki escape White Zetsu's detection? Therefore, 1 hour after the Tsunagakure high-level officials made the decision, this information appeared on Seiji's desk. After learning the information, King C almost laughed out loud. Isn't this just walking into a trap? Originally, he planned to let Sand Village and Konoha consume each other's energy, and then he could lead the Mist Village ninja to use the Angkor fortress to directly raid and capture the Sand Village, and then capture Shikaku, the one-tailed fox, whose location had been discovered by Black Zetsu. However, in that case, the Kirigakure ninjas would most likely be affected by the aftermath of the battle between him and the one-tailed Shikaku and suffer unnecessary casualties. Black Zetsu has already confirmed that the Sand Village prison where the one-tailed Jinchuriki Bunfuku is located has a barrier that blocks perception. Therefore, CG cannot directly use Takamagahara to locate Bunfuku. Therefore, once Kyoji goes to capture the one-tailed Shikaku, Bunfuku will have enough time to discover the clues and enter the complete tailed beast state in time. Although Kyoji was confident that he could suppress the fully transformed tailed beast Fenfuku in a very short period of time, no matter how fast he was, it would still take some time. After all, he couldn't do it like the Manjiki Sharingan, which could make the Jinkriki and the tailed beast in his body fall into illusion at the same time with just a glare. Therefore, this wave of operations by the Sand Village high-level officials gave Kingxi an excellent opportunity to capture Shikaku, the one-tailed monster, without any effort. After one day, 2 teams of Tsunagakure Enbu were escorting the one-tailed Jinchuriki Banfuku and were quickly heading to the Kikyo mountain battlefield. "You stinky monk!" The slightly sharp and arrogant voice of the one-tailed Shikaku suddenly rang in Fofuku's heart. "They don't even call your name now. In this case, are you still prepared to work for the Sand Village?" Being carried on the back of an Enbu, Fenfuku listened to the whistling sound of the wind due to the high speed, tremblingly closed his dry palms, and his consciousness slowly sank into the sealed space. He responded calmly, "It's okay. It's enough for you to know my real name. Even if you are a monk, but you put your hands together in front of people who hate you, and you always accompany a beast like me, don't you feel lonely at all?" One-tailed Shikaku asked again, "The Sand Village is afraid of my power and imprisoned you. You have no choice but to be imprisoned with beasts who hate humans. Don't you think it's unfair?" Although it is a tailed beast, Shikaku is very intelligent. It has already seen through what the Tsunagakure high-level leaders are planning by sending Fuku to the battlefield. Monk Fenfuku is the only human that it has taken a fancy to in all these years. It does not want Fenfuku to die because of the Sand Village's exploitation. Therefore, it preaches to Fenfuku in this way, hoping to arouse Fenfuku's dissatisfaction with the Sand Village. Shikaku. Bunfuku remained calm. "I know what you mean, but it doesn't matter. I also know what the higher-ups want to do." At this point, Fenfu paused, and then continued, "I hate the flying sand, but I love the land of the wind country. If I want, no one in the Sand Village can command me to perfectly exert your power. Besides, you don't need to worry too much about the boundary between humans and beasts. As long as you have close friends who understand and cherish you, you will be able to find peace and tranquility in your heart." As the voice fell, Feng Fu's hands also separated, revealing the words "and" engraved on the left and right palms. The human heart is like the reflection of the moon in the water, sometimes clear and sometimes blurry. It is also like a candle in the wind, flickering and difficult to grasp. However, even so, the deepest emotion and desire hidden in everyone's heart is consistent and unwavering, that is, the strong desire for mutual acceptance between each other, and this desire is not unique to humans, but also to beasts. Fenfu knew very well the plans of the Sand Village's high-level officials, but for the sake of the Sand Village, for the Wind Country, for peace and to end the war, and also for the sake of Shikaku and his body, he was willing to serve as a tool of the Sand Village's high-level officials, even if the price was his life. He has lived long enough. Shikaku was silent for a moment, digesting what Fenfuku said, and then he exclaimed, "Fenfuku, you and that old man, the Sage of Six Paths, really are alike." Fenfu's body trembled slightly, a trace of sadness flashed through his heart, and tears flowed from the corners of his tightly closed eyes. "Thank you, Shikaku. Your evaluation really makes me happy. This is my last battle. But I will not let the Sand Village ninjas suffer unnecessary casualties as the Sand Village higher-ups want. Therefore, I will take the initiative to enter the state of complete tailed beast transformation." Fubuku adjusted his emotions and expressed his thoughts. Fengfu. Shikaku felt the determination of Fengfu's heart, and his tone paused. But before Shikaku could say anything, Fenfuku interrupted him and continued, "However, before my life reaches the end, I will release you from the seal. Shikaku, this time, don't let humans catch you again." "I understand." Shikaku was stunned for a moment, then quickly reacted, slightly turned its huge raccoon head away to prevent Fubuku from seeing the complex look in its eyes, and responded sullenly. Chapter 403. When Fenfuku and the one-tailed Shikaku were communicating in the sealed space, the Sand Village Anbu who was carrying Fenfuku on his back and was also in charge of leading the team suddenly said, "Speed up a little bit, Lord Kazekage is still waiting for Shikaku's support, and I always have a bad feeling." "Yes." The other Anbu responded in unison, and then burst out chakra at the same time to speed up. At this time, they were almost out of the desert and approaching the border between the Wind Kingdom and the Fire Kingdom, and at their current speed, they would be able to reach the Plati-Kodon mountain battlefield in another half a day. Therefore, there was no need for the Sand Village Anbu to save chakra anymore. After all, in their opinion, Konoha could not possibly know about their actions, and even if they did, it would be impossible for them to cross their front line of defense and come to the Wind Country to intercept them. In addition, it is more important for Tsunagakure to send Shikaku to the front line as soon as possible, because if he arrives 1 minute earlier, Tsunagakure can launch a general attack on Konoha 1 minute earlier. However, the Sand Village Anbu leading the team would never have thought that Konoha did not come to stop them, and the one who came to stop them was the Mizukage of the Mist Village. Why hasn't Lord Kingji come yet? Didn't he see the information sent back? Using the ephemeral technique, the White Zetsu clone, who was far behind the Sand Village Anbu, kept talking to himself in his heart. At this moment, space fluctuations suddenly appeared in front of the Sand Village Anbu. Then, the next second, at the same time when Ching Si's figure went from blurry to clear, several yin-yang escape black sticks shining with a pitch-black luster directly pierced through all the Sand Village Anbu except the Anbu leading the team who was carrying Fuku. Killed with one blow. The Sand Village Anbu members who were killed instantly by King Si maintained their forward momentum and rushed forward for a long distance before falling to the ground one after another. The dull and heavy sound of bodies falling heavily to the ground came one after another and never stopped. Blood continued to flow out from the wounds. In the blink of an eye, the yellow desert was dyed dark red by the scarlet blood. After all the other Sand Village Anbu fell to the ground one after another, the leading Anbu shouted a shrill warning, "Enemy attack!" But then, the Anbu leader realized that something seemed to be wrong, as if an invisible hand was strangling his neck. The voice he had just shouted suddenly stopped. All things are attracted by heaven. King Si ignored the astonishment and fear of the only remaining Sand Village Anbu, and directly stretched out his right hand to activate gravity, pulling Fenfu behind him directly into the air. The moment CG appeared, the Shikaku in Bunfuku's body screamed, "Quick! Bunfuku! Transform into a tailed beast completely!" Looking at the double horns on the forehead that are exactly the same as those of Otsutsuki Hago Romo and Otsutsuki Hamura, and the standard Otsutsuki white robe, how could Shikaku not recognize Kyoshi's identity? However, the chakra aura released by Kyoshi is not very strong. Therefore, Shikaku believes that as the strongest among the tailed beasts, he has a chance to defeat Kyoshi. Besides, even if Shikaku can't defeat Kyoshi, he has enough confidence to escape. After all, the desert is his home ground. In the sealed space, Fenfu was shocked when he heard Shikaku's scream. In all the years that he had accompanied Shikaku, Fubuko had never seen Shikaku lose his composure to this extent, so, being able to vaguely sense Shikaku's inner turmoil, he did not hesitate at all, and after taking a deep look at Shikaku for the last time, he directly unsealed the seal on Shikaku in his body and released Shikaku. "Fenfu, you!" Shikaku's huge coin-shaped eyes shrank suddenly. It wanted Fenfu to use all its strength, but it didn't want Fenfu to directly unlock its seal. Although it yearned for the unrestrained and free life in the desert, Fenfu was the first human being it recognized in thousands of years, and Shikaku had already decided to accompany Fenfu until the last moment of his life. Haha! Fenfu squeezed out a gentle smile on his wrinkled old face. "Shikaku! Our fate ends here. My old and frail body cannot bring out all your strength. I can feel the fear of the enemy deep in your heart, so... goodbye. Shikaku." Chapter 404. A large number of deep red chakra bubbles quickly appeared on Fenfu's body surface, and terrifying chakra aura burst out from Fenfu's body. At the same time, Fenfu's own life breath became weaker and weaker. When King Si grabbed Fubuko's body, Fubuko's life breath had completely dissipated and he became a corpse. However, before that, Shikaku had been successfully released from Fubuko's body. Tisk! Shikaku is finally out. Ching Si dispersed the tail-locking seal he had prepared, his eyebrows moved slightly, and he curled his lips and said to himself, "But it's okay. Just play with it for a while." Afterwards, Kyoshi created a shadow clone and asked it to return to the hidden mist village to bring Nagato over. Since the one-tailed Shikaku had been completely released from the body by the Jinchuriki, it had no choice but to seal it where it was. King Si didn't want to bring such a big guy back to the village. Not only would it consume too much chakra, but it would also take up space and affect the appearance of the village. Bang! A huge earthy brown raccoon cat covered with curse patterns fell heavily on the desert ground in front of King Si, and took the opportunity to sit on the only remaining sand village Anbu, turning it into a pool of meat paste. Fengfu. Shikaku felt mixed emotions as he looked at the body of Fengfu held in Seiji's hands. His eyes revealed a complex look, including admiration, reluctance, fear, and anger. Shikaku put his two huge claws together to form the Mi seal, then roared at Seiji and attacked him directly. It knew very well that what the Otsutsuki clan wanted was the chakra in its body. There was no possibility of reconciliation between it and Kiyoshi. Moreover, this place was a desert. In the desert environment, it could exert 120% of its strength. Therefore, it was not at all afraid of the Otsutsuki clan in front of it, whose chakra aura was not weak. Strike first to gain the upper hand. Wind style, sand shot. Endless sand bullets appeared in the air under the effect of Shikaku's magnetic chakra, and then under the blowing of wind chakra, they whistled towards Kingxi with extremely strong penetrating power. Oh! Not a bad technique. But Kingxi looked at Shikaku's performance calmly, and commented calmly, "It's not enough to decide the outcome with one strike." The samsara eye lit up slightly, and soon, several giant black cubes appeared in front of Kingxi. While blocking Shikaku's attack, they also smashed towards Shikaku. Seeing this, Shikaku didn't move his body, but slapped his stomach hard with his claws. Wind style, air training bullet. A huge wind ball containing a large amount of chakra was spewed out from Shikaku's mouth and hit the big box sky that was coming in the front. Boom! With a loud bang, the Okatora was knocked off its original direction by Shikaku's training bullets. Then, Shikaku fired several consecutive training bullets, which deflected the other Okatora thrown by CG one by one. As expected of the one-tailed Shikaku, the power of this wind escape is quite impressive. Ching Si continued to comment, then changed the subject and put his hands together, "But this is not enough. Let me show you what real wind escape is. Immortal technique wind escape suppression." A ball of extremely dense compressed wind, like an extremely compressed storm artillery, swirled and whistled towards Shikaku with a deafening scream. Shikaku suddenly felt something was wrong and tried to dodge, but it was too late. The attack arrived before the sound. When Shikaku heard the shriek, the wind ball had already come close to Shikaku. Boom! The wind ball hit Shikaku, and in an instant, one of Shikaku's arms and shoulders exploded, spilling a large amount of sand. Shikaku cried out in pain, a trace of fear flashing in his eyes. The power of this wind escape was beyond his imagination. However, this was a desert, and to him, this was just a minor injury. However, Kiyoshi, who knows Shikaku's abilities, will not give Shikaku a chance to recover. After blowing off one of Shikaku's arms with one blow, Kiyoshi used the eye technique Takamaji Ehara to move behind Shikaku. He placed his right hand lightly on Shikaku's back and attacked him right at the face. Immortal technique, divine aerial attack. Boom! With an instant burst of chakra, Kingxi directly opened a big hole in Shikaku's chest from behind. Ah! Damn Otsutsuki! Shikaku let out an extremely shrill scream. His already sharp voice seemed to be able to penetrate the clouds and echoed over the desert. Shikaku's huge body was shaking violently, and it could hardly hold on and was on the verge of collapsing. Large amounts of sand and soil were falling out of its body like a flood that broke through a dam. Kingxi nodded with satisfaction. The next step was to suppress it and wait for the shadow clone to bring Nagato over and then seal it. Chapter 405. Kingxi slowly landed on the ground and said calmly to Shikaku, whose size was shrinking in front of him, "Well then. Let me put the collar on you first." Sealing technique, sealing chain. Without the Uzumaki clan's bloodline, Kingxi cannot use the most effective Vajra seal. Therefore, he can only choose the seal chain which has the same effect but is slightly weaker, to bind the one-tailed Shikaku. However, Kingxi did not see that Shikaku, who had his back to him, had a hint of cunning mixed with anger and pain in his huge coin-shaped eyes. You know, among the nine-tailed beasts, the IQ of the one-tailed Shikaku is definitely among the top. After all, it is the only tailed beast that can make hand seals and is good at using ninjutsu. Even though it had been beaten up by CG just now and had indeed suffered serious injuries, it had not lost its combat effectiveness as a tailed beast. It was just showing weakness to CG. Shikaku is very clear that the Otsutsuki clan is not good at sealing techniques, so the sealing technique can be regarded as a weakness of the Otsutsuki clan to some extent. And it just so happens that it is the best at sealing techniques among the tailed beasts, and its magnetic sealing technique is something even the Nine Tails envies. Although Kingxi was using the sealing technique to restrain it, Shikaku was still confident that Kingxi could not escape his magnetic seal technique. Therefore, Shikaku was waiting for the moment when Kingxi landed. However, Shikaku at this time would not have thought that Kiyoshi, the Otsutsuki, was different from other Otsutsuki. Kyoshi's mastery of sealing techniques was no less than those of the Uzumaki clan who specialized in sealing techniques. Moreover, more importantly, Shikaku is only at the level of Kage. Even if his magnetic sealing technique is very powerful, how can it seal CG who is at the level of 6 paths? At the moment when the sealing chain was about to be put on Shikaku and bind it, a black curse seal pattern exactly the same as the one on Shikaku's body emerged on the desert ground. A huge sand vortex suddenly appeared at Kingsee's location without any warning, like a ferocious beast with its bloody mouth opened wide. With huge suction force, it kept dragging Kingsee with force, trying to pull him deep into the underground. At the same time, Shikaku's only remaining arm was inserted into the desert under its feet, as if it had been melted by the high temperature, becoming soft and twisted, and blending into the sand. The strange chakra fluctuations immediately began to spread out from the point of contact, and ripples appeared on the surface of the desert, as if a giant sand python was swimming underground. Magnetic Escape Desert Layer Burial Seal. A sand pyramid covered with a large number of black seal runes appeared in the desert in the blink of an eye, and trapped Kingsee firmly inside. Ha ha ha! Shikaku laughed wildly while absorbing a large amount of sand into his body, quickly recovering from his injuries. So what if you're an Otsutsuki? You still have to be sealed by me. This is the great burial seal formed by my sand body and cursed seal pattern. Now, you can never breathe fresh air again. Shikaku continued to taunt Kingsee who was sealed by it. However, before Shikaku could be happy for a few seconds, Kingsee's calm voice came out from the seal. At the same time, a dazzling white light pierced through the thick surface of the sand pyramid like a sharp arrow and bloomed wantonly. Just a grain of sand. Not even half as good as me. Do you think you can trap me with a seal like this? Super Shinra Tenzen. As for Shikaku's magnetic style sealing technique, Kingji was too lazy to activate the Samsara Eye Chakra mode. After all, the gap in strength between the two sides was too huge. A normal Super Kagura Tensei was enough to break the seal. Boom! Accompanied by violent vibrations, the desert layer burial seal that Shikaku thought was indestructible was directly broken like fragile paper. A tremendous repulsive force burst out from the center of the seal like a surging torrent. After breaking the seal, it impacted everything around it with unstoppable force. A large amount of sand shot out and scattered in all directions at an astonishing speed. Shikaku, who had not yet fully recovered, was injured again by this Super Kagura Tensei. That huge body was involuntarily pushed backwards by the repulsive force, leaving a deep mark on the desert. Shikaku was pushed backwards by the repulsive force, his eyes full of disbelief. He never thought that the magnetic sealing technique that he was so proud of could be easily broken by the opponent. Didn't they say that the Otsutsuki clan is not good at sealing techniques? What happened to the sealing technique being the Otsutsuki clan's weakness? Shikaku kept muttering to himself. He felt like he had been tricked, but it was no longer realistic for him to run away, he could only make one last attempt. So, Shikaku used its arm, which had been fully recovered, to forcibly stabilize its body, and then opened its mouth wide towards Cg, whose figure was revealed as the dust gradually dissipated. The yin and yang chakra gathered at a rapid speed, and soon formed a huge purple-black chakra sphere. Then, Shikaku roared and fired it out without any hesitation. Tailed Beast Jade. Chapter 406. The purple-black chakra ball, with a terrifying momentum, rushed towards Kingsee. Wherever it passed, the air continued to vibrate violently, forming visible air ripples that quickly spread out. Looking at the approaching tailed beast ball, Kingsee's mouth curled up slightly and he clapped his hands. In that case, then let's try other moves of Senju Hashirama. Senjutsu, wood release, ranking technique. A wooden shield shaped like a fang-like ghost face suddenly stood up in front of Kingsee, blocking him behind him. The next second, the tailed beast ball with destructive power slammed heavily onto the wooden shield. Immediately, a huge roar that resounded through the sky suddenly erupted, producing a series of shock waves visible to the naked eye. Even the earth shook at the moment of the collision. However, when the billowing smoke and dust in the air dissipated, the wooden shield that had almost endured the entire power of the tailed beast ball explosion did not leave the slightest trace. It just stood there quietly, like an indestructible fortress. However, this is not surprising. The wood release, ranking technique performed by Hashirama Senju can easily block Uchiha Madara's beast difficulty, which is the explosion of the tailed beast ball fired at the face by the power equipment, 9 tails without any damage. Then, the tailed beast ball performed by the more powerful Cg can easily block a small one-tailed Shikaku, not to mention that the six-path senjutsu used by CG surpassed the ordinary wood release technique of Hashirama Senju. The wooden shield slowly fell to the ground under Kingxi's control, and then he smiled with satisfaction. Senju Hashirama, I have to say, your wood release is really useful. Well, next, we should suppress Shikaku. Kiyoshi is no longer ready to continue playing with Shikaku. When Shikaku saw that Kyoji was using wood release to block its tailed beast ball, he already felt that something bad was going to happen. Although he had never been beaten by Hashirama Senju's wood release, he had seen the wood release used by Ashura, the son of the old man Six Paths, 1,000 years ago. He had some understanding of the wood release that was the natural nemesis of the tailed beasts. Shikaku, the one-tailed beast, is the only one that has not been captured by Hashirama Senju. During the first 5-cage summit, the first Kazekage Retsudo of the Sand Village was not interested in Hashirama Senju's proposal to sell the tailed beasts. He said that their sand village already had one tail and only needed the land of the fire country and 30% of the funds from other villages to buy the tailed beasts. So Shikaku made a quick decision and turned around and ran. However, before it could run far, Kingxi's next round of attack had already arrived. Senjutsu, wood release, advent of the tree world. Along with the explosion of Kingxi's chakra, the desert full of yellow sand suddenly showed some vibrant green. Countless sturdy trees quickly broke out from under the sand. The branches of the trees crisscrossed like a huge net, which instantly wrapped Shikaku tightly in it and tied him up tightly. Shikaku let out deafening roars and twisted its huge body wildly, trying to break free from the trees that were tightly wrapped around it. However, the harder it struggled, the tighter these trees, blessed by Kingxi's fairy chakra, tightened around it. Moreover, with every violent movement of Shikaku, these trees were rapidly absorbing Shikaku's chakra to grow stronger. As a result, Shikaku's momentum became increasingly weak, and the strength of his resistance became increasingly weak. Soon, there was no movement anymore. One-tailed Shikaku. Capture complete. Chapter 407. After the one-tail Shikaku was suppressed by wood release and lost the ability to resist, about a few minutes later, Seiji's shadow clone returned with his disciple Nagato. Teacher. Nagato respectfully bowed to Kingxi's real body. At the same time, Kingxi's shadow clone, which had completed its mission, turned into a wisp of white smoke and dissipated. Yet. Kingxi smiled and nodded, his right hand unconsciously rubbing Nagato's soft red hair. The shadow clone told you everything, right? Yes. Teacher. Nagato smiled helplessly at Kingxi. What a teacher. He has grown up, why is he still bunning his hair like when he was a child? Immediately, Nagato turned his gaze to the one-tail Shikaku who was tightly bound in the wood release not far away. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect that his teacher Seiji had even mastered the wood release that once dominated the ninja world. As for Shikaku being easily knocked down by Kiyoshi, Nagato was not surprised at all. After all, he knew clearly the strength level of his teacher. Shikaku was just a piece of shit. After sighing for a few seconds, Nagato's expression became serious and he said to Seiji, Teacher. Then I will begin. Let's get started. Let's do it together. This way we can progress faster. We can finish work earlier and return to the village. Kingxi nodded again and responded. Kingji had already obtained and learned the sealing technique to seal the tailed beast into the body of the outer path demon statue from Black Zetsu. With Nagato's current strength, it would take quite a while for him to seal the one-tailed Shikaku into the outer path statue by himself. But if Kingxi is added, the time required will only be a short moment. Refer to the Fourth Ninja World War, when the newly resurrected Uchiha Madara instantly sealed all the tailed beasts. Of course, during the sealing process, Kingji only played an auxiliary role in speeding up the sealing progress. After all, Kingji did not have the Rinnegan and could not control the Gaiden statue. Nagato, who obtained the Rinnegan of Uchiha Madara, was the main body who sealed the one-tail Shikaku this time. Nagato put his hands together, and the chakra in his body surged wildly. Soon, a huge summoning array appeared above the desert. A slightly excited roar, accompanied by a large amount of white smoke, appeared right in front of Nagato. The art of spiritual communication. The outer demon statue. After summoning the outer path demon statue, Nagato immediately jumped onto its head and quickly formed seals with his hands. Seeing Nagato's actions, Kingxi's figure slowly floated up, and then began to make hand seals in sync with Nagato. And the one-tailed Shikaku, which was bound tightly by the wood release not far away, couldn't help but reveal extreme fear and terror in its huge copper coin eyes when it noticed Nagato's Rinnegan with purple ripples and saw the outer path demon statue summoned by Nagato. As a tailed beast that was separated from the 10 tails by Otsutsuki Hago Romo using yin-yang release, how could it not recognize the body of the 10 tails? The breath of death continued to hover in Shikaku's heart, but at this moment, it was just a catfish on the chopping board, without any ability to resist. If it was captured by Kingxi and then sealed into a human body to create a Jinchuriki, then at most it would lose its freedom, but its life would not be in danger. Or maybe it was beaten up by Kingxi and then killed directly, then at most it would enter a period of emptiness in its resurrection, and it would be resurrected again when the time is up. But now, what appeared before it was the former body of the 10 tails, the outer path statue. At this time, Shikaku finally understood what purpose Seiji had in capturing it. What this Otsutsuki wanted was to resurrect the former 10 tails. It can be said that once it is sealed in the golem, it basically has no hope, and what is even more terrifying is that once the other 8-tailed beasts are also sealed in the golem, then the former 10 tails will be resurrected. The resurrection of the 10 tails, plus the Otsutsuki in front of him, means that it, the one-tail Shikaku, is truly dead. So how could Shikaku not be afraid and terrified? However, it had no other options but to wait in vain for its fate to be sealed. Sealing technique, Phantom Dragon 9 seals. Nagato and Seiji's tiger seals fell at the same time, and the next moment, the Gaiden demon statue opened its mouth wide, and a 9-headed chakra dragon flashing with light blue light jumped out of it. Then, under Nagato's control, it fiercely bit Shikaku, the one-tailed sword that was bound by the wood release. Shikaku, having completely lost the power to resist, could only watch as the 9-headed dragon got closer and closer to it, and then bit its body. In an instant, a large amount of dark red-tailed beast chakra was extracted from Shikaku's body by the Phantom Dragon 9 seals, and then quickly swallowed by the outer path demon statue. In just less than a breath of time, Shikaku's huge figure completely disappeared in the forest formed by the wood release and was completely sealed in the outer path statue. At this time, the outer path golem completely opened one of its eyes for the first time. One-tailed Shikaku. The seal is complete. The chakra of the 9-tailed beasts gathered in the outer path demon statue, and the 10 tails can be resurrected, even if it is not a complete tailed beast. However, in that case, the resurrected 10 tails will not be considered a complete form. Chapter 408. After sealing the one-tailed Shikaku, Kingxi slowly landed on the ground and looked up at the outer path statue carefully. At this time, 3 of the 9 eyes of the outer path demon statue were open. The eye representing the one-tailed Shikaku was fully open, while the other 2 eyes were half open, representing the 3-tailed Isabu and the 6-tailed rhino. As for the 3-tailed beasts and the 6-tailed beasts owned by the Hidden Mist Village, Kyoji had no intention of sealing them up completely. After all, they had shed blood and made contributions for the Hidden Mist Village, and Kyoji was not the kind of person who would abandon the donkey after it has served its purpose. What's more, the 6-tailed Jinchuriki, Mei Terumi, was selected by him personally, and was also the younger generation he was more optimistic about, while the 3-tailed Jinchuriki, Yagura Kiruta, was his beloved relative, brother. Therefore, under Kyoji's personal operation, nearly half of the chakra of the 3-tailed Isabu and the 6-tailed rhino was cut off, and they were sealed by the outer path demon statue instead, in order to meet the necessary conditions for the resurrection of the 10-tailed. After all, in order to revive Kagaya's 10-tailed, the chakra of the 9-tailed beasts must be gathered. As for Kagaya, she actually doesn't lack the chakra of these 2-tailed beasts. For the entire 10 tails, the 3-tailed Isabu and the 6-tailed rhino are just a small part of it. The real bulk of the tailed beast's chakra actually comes from the 8-tail and the 9-tail, especially the 9-tail. Conservative estimates show that the 9-tail's chakra accounts for at least half of the 10 tails. Therefore, this is the reason why the 2 eyes of the outer statue representing the 3-tailed Isabu and the 6-tailed rhino dog were not fully opened but only half opened. As for the 3-tailed Isobuki and 6-tailed rhino whose chakra had been cut off by nearly half, although they will fall into a short period of weakness, at least their lives are safe. Moreover, they are fighting side by side with their respective Jinchuriki. At most, their sustained combat capability will be reduced because their chakra is reduced by half, but in terms of overall strength, they will not be much weaker than before. Moreover, over time, they can also replenish their lost chakra by absorbing the natural energy of the ninja world. Of course, they have no time to care about the other tailed beasts. Although the relationship between them is still okay, after all, it is better to let my friend die than to let me die. Let's go. Nagato. Let's go back. After a moment, Kingxi interrupted his thoughts and came back to his senses and said to Nagato. At the same time, he also collected the bodies of the dead sand village Anbu and Fubukuro, and destroyed the bodies and covered the traces. After hearing Kingxi's call, Nagato immediately cancelled the summons of the outer path demon statue, sent it back, and then came to Kingxi's side. Afterwards, CG put his arm around Nagato's shoulder and used the eye technique Takamagahara, and the two returned to the hidden mist village together. The next day. Platikodon Mountain Battlefield. The frontier base of the Sand Village. Raza, who had just become the fourth Kazekage a few days ago and was about to cause massive damage to Konoha by releasing the one-tail Shikaku on the battlefield, waited and waited but the one-tail Jinchuriki Banfuku never arrived. According to the normal speed, the one-tail Jinchuriki should have been escorted to the front line by the Anbu. Even if he was delayed by something on the way, he shouldn't be so late. What made Luo Sha even more uneasy was that no matter how hard he tried, he could not contact the two teams of elite Anbu who were escorting the one-tail Jinchuriki. Therefore, Luo Sha couldn't help but have a very bad premonition in his heart. So, Luo Sha immediately used the art of summoning to send a message back to the Sand Village to inquire about the matter. And when the news about Raza reached the hands of the Tsunagakure high-ranking officials, they who were sitting in the village waiting for Shikaku to kill a lot on the battlefield, were shocked to realize that the development of the situation was beyond their control. However, the place where Kyoji and the one-tailed Shikaku fought was near the border between the Land of Wind and the Land of Fire, which was too far away from the Sand Village. Moreover, the battle between Kyoji and the one-tailed Shikaku ended very quickly. In addition, Kyoji did not use any special and extraordinary techniques during the battle, and there was no ninja in the Sand Village with such strong perception ability. Therefore, the fact that the one-tailed Shikaku was captured and sealed by Kyoji was not noticed by the Sand Village at all. After sending out a large number of Anbu to search along the way, Raza and the Tsunagakure high-ranking officials only found traces of the one-tailed Shikaku appearing and fighting, as well as the chaotic and indistinguishable chakra aura left at the battle scene. Therefore, they just thought that the one-tailed Shikaku suddenly went berserk halfway, and did not think at all that the tailed beast in their village had been captured. After all, even if the third Kazekage Tetsusa, who is known as the strongest Kazekage, can suppress Shikaku alone in the desert, defeat him, and seal him, the entire battle process will take at least 10 minutes or even dozens of minutes, and it will not be without any movement. The fourth Kazekage Raza, who was a disciple of Iron Sand, was even slightly inferior. Although he was able to rely on the desert's geographical advantages and the special features of magnetic release, gold sand to suppress and defeat the one-tail Shikaku, it would take him much longer than Iron Sand. This means that the chakra fluctuations generated by their battle are easier to perceive. You know, the chakra reaction produced by a battle of this level between a cage-level strongman and a tailed beast can still be sensed from a long distance, even if the perception team of the Sand Village is poor. Just like the battle between Seiji and Uchiha Madara in River Country, that kind of terrifying and strong chakra reaction could be sensed smoothly by the Sand Village even though it was separated by half of the ninja world. Therefore, under the premise that the perception team did not find any clues, the Sand Village did not have any other suspicions at all. They just thought that the one-tailed Shikaku successfully eroded Fufuku's wool, escaped the seal, and hid in the vast desert. After all, the one-tailed Jinchuriki Fufuku looked like he was about to die at any time. Therefore, in the shallow understanding of Raza and the Sand Village's high-ups, it made sense that Shikaku went berserk and broke free from the seal. Therefore, Raza and the Tsunagakure high-level officials could only accept their bad luck and focus their main energy on the war with Konoha village. As for the war weapon of the Sand Village, the one-tailed Shikaku, they can only wait until the war is over, and then spend a lot of manpower to search for its trace in the desert. Then Raza will take action to capture it again and choose a new Jinchuriki. Chapter 409. Soon, another 3 days passed. During these 3 days, several small-scale battles broke out again between Konoha and Tsunagakure, but both sides always maintained a certain degree of restraint. The Konoha side is still waiting for Namikaze Minato's Flying Thunder God Jutsu, while the Tsunagakure side, because they have no other choice for the time being, can only restrain and maintain the intensity of the war and wait for the negotiations between Ebizo and Uegakure village to be completed. Although the Sand Village will inevitably pay a part of its interests, only after ensuring that the Uegakure village will not attack the Sand Village after joining the war, will Ebizo be able to free up his hands to provide support on the battlefield here. Then, the Sand Village can gather 4 cage-level fighters and suppress Konoha in high-end combat power, thereby tipping the scales of victory. However, having said that, the Sand Village's plan is perfect, but unfortunately, Konoha will not give Sand Village enough time. Because, Minato Namikaze's Flying Thunder God second stage has been successfully developed. After another large-scale battle broke out, Minato Namikaze, who fought with Raza for a while but was still unable to break the turtle shell formed by Raza with gold sand, launched a surprise attack on Yekura, who was fighting Jiraiya not far away, and Cho, who was fighting Orochimaru according to the established strategy. Although Raza can rely on the magnetic release, gold sand to fly in the air and has an extremely fast support speed to various places on the battlefield, no matter how fast he is, how can he be faster than Minato Namikaze, who can transfer space through time and space ninjutsu? As a result, Yekang and Cho were in serious trouble. Jiraiya, who was fighting with Yekang, suddenly threw a Flying Thunder God Kunao belonging to Minato Namikaze at Yekang. Then, before the Kunao was destroyed by the Shokyuton, Jiraiya quickly used the long-planned Shuriken Shadow Clone technique and spread the coordinates of the Flying Thunder God around Yekang. Minato Namikaze had already been secretly aware of the other 2 battlefields, and was always ready to use the Flying Thunder God technique to move. Therefore, at the same time Jiraiya took action, Minato Namikaze immediately launched the Flying Thunder God technique and moved directly to the vicinity of Yekang. As luck would have it, at the same moment when Minato Namikaze was performing a spatial transfer, Raza also happened to use a large-scale magnetic release, Gold Sand Realm technique in an attempt to launch a covering attack on Minato Namikaze. And so, Luasha is so gorgeous. He spent a long time preparing for the battle and used up a large amount of chakra to use his ultimate move, but Minato Namikaze dodged it skillfully. It's bad. Luosha blurted out the moment he discovered Kongde, and then he immediately controlled the gold sand under his feet and took him to rush towards Yekang and Cho at a high speed. But it's too late. While Raza was rushing in the air, Namikaze Minato had already completed his attack on Yekang and Cho. When Yekang saw the densely packed Flying Thunder God Kunao shot towards her, she instantly realized that she also wanted Minato Namikaze to come over as well, and then they would join forces to beat her up. After all, the style of the Flying Thunder God Kunao is too special compared to ordinary standard Kunao. It is so special that anyone who has some knowledge of Minato Namikaze can recognize it at a glance. However, although Yekang had tried his best to use Scorch Release to destroy the large number of Flying Thunder God Kunao thrown by Jiraiya in the first place, the Flying Thunder God Kunao that Jiraiya had created as a shadow clone had too many of them, so quite a few of them were still successfully scattered around Yekang. So, the next second, Minato Namikaze appeared next to a Flying Thunder God Kunao near Yekang. When Yekang saw Minato Namikaze appear, his heart suddenly became solemn. As expected. However, during these days, the Sand Village had already become familiar with the information about the Flying Thunder God technique. Therefore, Yekang immediately waved her hand and controlled a burning fireball to blast towards Minato Namikaze. At the same time, she also quickly locked onto the remaining Flying Thunder God Kunao scattered around her, ready to wait for Minato Namikaze to take advantage of the opportunity. However, the information about the Flying Thunder God technique of the Sand Village was already outdated at this time. Namikaze Minato's Flying Thunder God second stage is an advanced version of the space-time ninjutsu derived from the Flying Thunder God technique. It allows Namikaze Minato to transfer with the Raise Nan, an unprinted ninjutsu he developed by imitating the tailed beast ball. Konoha waited for so many days before launching a large-scale battle again. What they were waiting for was Minato Namikaze's Flying Thunder God second stage. Therefore, when Yekang was confidently waiting for Minato Namikaze to perform another space transfer, Minato Namikaze quickly approached him, threw the Flying Thunder God Kunao in his left hand towards Yekang, and a rapidly rotating blue chakra sphere appeared in his right hand. Seeing that Minato Namikaze did not rely on the Flying Thunder God technique to transfer space and launch a surprise attack, Yekang chose to collide with Minato Namikaze head-on after weighing the pros and cons in an instant. So, after dodging the Flying Thunder God Kunao thrown by Minato Namikaze by turning sideways, she immediately controlled the 4 burning fireballs flying around her and blasted at Minato Namikaze from several different directions. Scorch escape, oversteaming kill. In Yekang's opinion, the Flying Thunder God Kunao was only a means to attract her to reveal her flaws, or force her to use Scorch Release Fireball to resist, thus creating an opportunity for Namikaze Minato to attack. The real threat actually came from the azure blue dumpling in Namikaze Minato's hand, which made her feel vaguely frightened. After all, according to the information she obtained, the space transfer of Flying Thunder God technique cannot carry any ninjutsu. So, what Yaking didn't know was that the Flying Thunder God kunai that brushed past her body was Minato Namikaze's real killer move. When the 4 scorching fireballs controlled by Yaking were about to hit Minato Namikaze disappeared from Yaking's sight. Then, a light shout from Minato Namikaze came from behind Yaking, accompanied by a sudden sharp pain in her body. Raise Nan. The Book of Formations defines Flying Thunder God second stage as a technique produced by the Flying Thunder God technique, which is an evolved version of space-time ninjutsu that allows Minato Namikaze to move behind the enemy with the thrown Flying Thunder God kunai, and then launch an attack from behind the enemy. Chapter 410. Yaking was suddenly hit by a Raise Nan from behind. She felt as if she was hit hard. She flew forward and then fell heavily to the ground. The irregular and high-speed rotating chakra continued to rage on her back, as if to tear her apart completely. Yaking was completely unprepared, and his body was simply unable to withstand this powerful impact. He felt as if his internal organs were hit hard by a heavy hammer, causing unbearable pain. At the same time, a large amount of bright red blood gushed out of Yaking's mouth uncontrollably, drawing a beautiful bloodline in the air. And all this actually happened in just such a short moment. Seeing that Yaking was seriously injured by Minato Namikaze, Jiraiya also showed his ruthless side towards the enemy. He instantly appeared in front of Yaking, and a blue dumpling of the same type as Minato Namikaze appeared in his hand, wanting to end Yaking here. However, Yaking was not destined to die after all, or in other words, the place where Minato Namikaze and Raza fought was not too far away from the place where Jiraiya and Yaking fought. Just when Jiraiya was about to destroy the flower with his ruthless hands, the 4th Kazekage Raza, who was deceived by Minato Namikaze, finally arrived in time at the last moment. A wall of sand suddenly rose in front of Yaking, blocking the Azure Raise Nan and Jiraiya's footsteps, preventing him from moving forward even a single step. It was the magnetic style, gold sand used by Luo Shat. The sand wall standing in front of Yaking was flashing with dazzling golden light, like an indestructible fortress, giving her hope of surviving the dangerous situation. Accompanied by a muffled sound and an explosion of chaotic chakra, for a moment, tiny shattered gold sand particles flew everywhere. Although the power of the Raise Nan was very strong, Raza, as the 4th Kazekage, was no pushover. In the end, although Sakin's defense was successfully broken, the power of the Raise Nan was almost gone. Moreover, Raza himself had already used the sand instant body to come in front of Yaking. On the other side, after a successful attack, Minato Namikaze did not stay for too long. Instead, he flashed and moved directly to the battlefield between Orochimaru and Cho, and then cooperated with Orochimaru to launch a surprise attack on Cho. However, Chiyo's combat experience is much richer than Yaking's, and as a puppeteer, Cho is always on guard against being approached by others. Therefore, although the Flying Thunder God second stage that appeared on the battlefield for the first time broke the Sand Village's conventional understanding of the Flying Thunder God technique, Cho relied on her extremely experienced vision and ultimate control over the puppets and did not give Namikaze Minato the slightest chance to launch a surprise attack. However, Cho was fine, but many of her puppets were damaged by Minato Namikaze's great power. Although the materials used by the Chikamatsu 10 people were of the best quality, they could not withstand the violent bombardment of Minato Namikaze's Raise Nan one after another, as he kept flashing and moving among the puppets. So, in just a few breaths, Chiyo's Chikamatsu 10 puppets were smashed to pieces by Namikaze Minato. Of the 10 puppets, only 6 were left intact, while the remaining 4 puppets were already in a damaged state with limbs missing. But, that's it. Although Chiyo's strength has declined due to the incompleteness of the Chikamatsu 10, Cho is still a veteran cage-level powerhouse who has been immersed in puppetry for decades. Even if he is suppressed by Orochimaru and Namikaze Minato, he can protect himself in the short term. I can only say that Cho is worthy of being the mainstay of the Sand Village. After a while, when Namikaze Minato continued to attack Chiyo's remaining puppets crazily, the 4th Kazekage Raza, who was always slow, finally flew over from the air with the injured Yaking. At the same time, Jiraiya was a little slower and fell behind Raza and rushed to his good friend Orochimaru and his disciple Minato Namikaze. This means that this war can no longer continue. At this time, of the 3 cage-level fighters in the Sand Village, 1 was seriously injured, and 1 had his combat power reduced. Only the 4th Kazekage Raza was still maintaining his condition. On the other hand, on the Konoha side, Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and Namikaze Minato, except for the consumption of a lot of chakra, nothing happened to them. Even Orochimaru, who was in the best condition, didn't even have any damage to his clothes. The only damage was the dust from the battle. Therefore, it can be said that this battle, which was a decisive battle, finally ended with the victory of Konoha village. Of course, this does not mean that the war between the two villages has ended. After this war, the Sand Village still has enough strength and foundation to continue fighting with Konoha. However, the situation of the war was reversed from this moment on. The Sand Village, which was unstoppable at the beginning of the war, gradually began to retreat and defend, while Konoha village launched a full-scale counterattack. The battlefield was slowly pushed back by Konoha from Mount Kikyo towards the Wind Kingdom. Although all the Sand Village ninjas fought bravely in the war, the lack of high-end combat power meant that the defense line of Sand Village was constantly penetrated by Konoha. The 4th Kazekage Raza became a firefighter on the battlefield. It was because he had the ability to fly that he could provide rapid mobile support. Otherwise, he would have been dragged to death on the battlefield sooner or later. In just 1 week, Konoha drove the Sand Village back to the Land of Wind. At this time, Ebizo, who had negotiated terms with the Iwagakure village, finally arrived, and the situation in the Sand Village finally improved. The seriously injured Yekura had been sent back to the Sand Village for recuperation. The Sand Village only had 2 cage-level powerhouses on the front line, Cho, whose combat power had declined, and the 4th Kazekage Raza. Therefore, after Ebizo arrived, the two sides finally reached a balance in high-end combat power again. However, Ebizo had to pay a considerable price to be able to come to this battlefield without any scruples. In order to be able to provide timely support, Ebizo gave up a lot of interests in the negotiations with the Iwagakure village. After repeated verbal battles between him and the 3rd Tsuchikage, he finally reached a secret agreement on an offensive and defensive alliance on behalf of the Sand Village and the Iwagakure village. Moreover, in order to completely eliminate the threat posed by the Iwagakure village to the border of the Land of Wind, the Sand Village will do its best to hold back the Konoha village during the war and create favorable conditions for the Iwagakure village to invade the Land of Fire. In addition, in the distribution of Konoha's interests after the war, it will cede 30% of them to the Iwagakure village. Of course, this actually just suited Onoki's wishes. After all, the land of the Kingdom of Wind was all desert, which was tasteless like chicken ribs to the Kingdom of Earth. He had never thought of invading the Kingdom of Wind. And Onoki's real target must be the Land of Fire and Konoha village. After all, wouldn't it be great to raid the Fire Nation and seize its abundant resources? You know, Konoha's weakness has been fully demonstrated in the previous joint Chunin exam. In addition, Konoha White Fang's suicide caused Konoha to lose a large number of top combat forces. This is the first time that Onoki has really seen the hope of defeating Konoha village. And this is because Onoki was still unaware of the information that the Hokage's assistant Danzo Shimura was missing. If he knew that Konoha didn't even have the shinobi anymore, he would have definitely joined the battle long ago. Therefore, at the same time when Ebizo rushed to the front-line battlefield and formed a standoff with Konoha, the 3rd Tsuchikage brought thousands of elite soldiers from the Iwagakure village and once again borrowed the passage from the Land of Grass and directly raided Konoha's border garrison troops stationed at the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Grass, declaring war on Konoha village without warning. At this point, with the entry of the Iwagakure village into the war, the Third Ninja World War broke out in full swing. And when this news was passed back to the Hidden Mist village by White Zetsu, King C knew that the opportunity he had been waiting for had finally arrived. It's time for the Hidden Mist village to join the war and make their voice heard in the ninja world. Chapter 411. The fate of the Iwagakure village gave the Kirigakure village a perfect opportunity to intervene. You know, the Land of Wind borders the Land of Earth. If the Iwagakure village did not fight with the Konoha village, then once the Mist village attacked the Sand village, even if the Sand village was destroyed fast enough, it would inevitably face a triple blow from the Iwagakure village, Konoha village, and the remaining forces of the Sand village. Perhaps even the Hidden Cloud village, which had no chance of survival, would abandon their original plan to attack the Hidden Leaf village and the Hidden Iwa village and take the initiative to attack the Hidden Mist village. After all, as long as the Hidden Mist village destroys the Hidden Sand village, both the purpose and strength of the Hidden Mist village will be exposed. Although other ninja villages also have ambitions to dominate or unify the ninja world to varying degrees, the first one to stand out will definitely be attacked by everyone. The idea that the ninja world does not allow such a powerful ninja village to exist can be said to be a consensus among the Iwagakure village, the Sand village, and the Kirigakure village. Of course, for Kingji and the Hidden Mist village under his jurisdiction, fighting on multiple fronts is not impossible, but it is completely unnecessary. The price to pay for fighting on multiple fronts is even heavier. Excessive losses of manpower are not conducive to the rule of the Hidden Mist village after the unification of the ninja world. We can't let Kyoji personally fight in every battlefield. Moreover, once Kingsi makes a move, it will be easy for him to fail to control the power of the technique and cause excessive killings. After all, the gap between him and ordinary ninjas is like the gap between the bright moon and fireflies. It is too big. Those Chunins, who are the most numerous on the battlefield, may not be able to withstand the aftermath of the technique he casually uses. However, these ninjas will be the tools that can provide chakra for his 10 tails divine tree circulation in the future, so of course he can't do this. So, if you can push forward slowly, why should you be too anxious? After all, it is not the time to release Kaguya directly from the 6 paths, Chibaku Tensei. The rebellious son Otsutsuki Hago Romo is always on guard against Kaguya's seal in the Pure Land. Therefore, the current situation is what Kingsi wants most. After the Uegakure village fought with the Konoha village, even if they learned that the Sand village was destroyed by the Mist village, they would definitely not be able to shake hands and make peace. After years of hatred, and with the war already underway and casualties on both sides, how could it be so easy to stop the war? Therefore, if these two ninja villages really have plans to deal with the Hidden Mist village that has captured the Hidden Sand village, they must only be able to allocate a small part of their forces. After all, in the north of the ninja world, there is still the Hidden Cloud village that has not yet been conquered, and is ready to enter the battlefield at any time with a covetous look in their eyes. Although the land of lightning does not border the land of earth and the land of fire, the distance between them is not far. In comparison, this is much more convenient than crossing the sea to attack the Hidden Mist village or crossing most of the ninja world to attack the Hidden Sand village. Therefore, it is more realistic for the Hidden Cloud village to take action against their arch-enemy, the Hidden Uegakure village, and the Konoha village, which can gain more benefits. After all, for the ninja village, immediate interests are more important. Not to mention, CG and the top leaders of Kirigakure have repeatedly deduced in the past few days based on the personalities of the third Tsuchikage no Ki and the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. Once Uegakure and Konoha learn that the Sand village has been destroyed, it is more likely that they will temporarily stand by and watch, and then decide the winner between the two sides. Onoki's idea is most likely to get rid of Konoha first, then take all the benefits that can be obtained, and then turn around to deal with the Hidden Mist village. After all, since the Second Ninja World War, the Uegakure village, which has been holding its breath, has been frantically expanding its troops. Although there are not many top combat forces, in terms of the number of ninjas, the Uegakure village can call itself the number one in the ninja world without exaggeration. Therefore, from Onoki's perspective, the Konoha village, which is strong on the outside but weak on the inside, will definitely not be a match for his Uegakure village. As for Sarutobi Hiruzen, his attitude is simply to compromise, compromise, and compromise again. Blinded by the power of Hokage, he is now more like a political creature. He has long lost the demeanor of the ninja hero at the end of the First Ninja World War and the Second Ninja World War. Therefore, under such a complicated situation, the Hidden Mist village has nothing to worry about. It can be said that it is the perfect time to destroy the Sand village. Kirigakure village. Meeting room in Shuiying building. The Kirigakure Jonin and Special Jonin who were notified to attend the meeting entered the meeting room one after another in an orderly manner, and then sat down at their respective seats. It has to be said that the Kirigakure high-level officials did a very good job of keeping secrets. Although the Kirigakure ninjas had speculated that Kirigakure might be officially joining the war based on the actions of Kirigakure in recent days, they had not received a clearer explanation until this pre-war expanded meeting. The Mizukage-sama has arrived. Following a loud shout from Zigwashin Puffer Ghost, a loyal fan of Ching Si who was sitting in the first row, Ching Si took a step out of the space channel, and his figure instantly turned from blurry to clear, appearing right in front of the conference room. Brush! Everyone in the conference room immediately restrained the different expressions on their faces, stood up solemnly at the same time, and bowed slightly to Kingsi in the front to express their respect. Well, please take a seat, everyone. Kingsi nodded at everyone with a gentle expression and smiled with satisfaction. At the same time, he stretched out his hands and made a virtual pressing gesture, controlling the atmosphere in the conference room. As Kingsi made his move, the atmosphere in the conference room suddenly became completely quiet, leaving only the orderly sound of everyone taking their seats. All the people present at the meeting stared at their most admired Mizukage-sama with eyes filled with fanatical admiration, waiting for his speech. Are all the jonin and special jonin present? Kyoshi turned his head slightly and asked Chino Kizuna, the Mizukage's secretary, who was sitting next to the Ziguitian puffer demon. This meeting was a formal combat meeting before the war. Kingji had to make specific arrangements on how to quickly and efficiently destroy the sand village. Therefore, he could not allow anyone to be absent without reason. In the original work, after the Hidden Cloud village learned that the third Kazekage was missing, the third Reikage AI personally led the team, crossed half of the distance of the ninja realm, and took advantage of the situation to raid the hidden sand village. This operation can be said to be similar to the second Mizukage Hojiki personally leading the team to raid the hidden rock village. Chapter 412. Everyone is here, Lord Mizukage. Chino Kizuna nodded at CG and responded. Very good. Ching Si also nodded slightly, then let's start today's meeting. King Si's gaze swept across all the participants one by one, and finally fell on a group of Kirigakure high-level officials including the third Mizukage Bing and the elder Yuanji. Immediately, he cleared his throat, his expression became solemn and serious, and he said slowly, word by word, today, I have summoned you all here mainly to arrange the next relevant strategic deployment of the village. After hearing the opening remarks of their own Mizukage, especially the word strategic deployment, everyone attending the meeting seemed to feel an invisible pressure, their heartstrings involuntarily tightened, and the expressions on their faces became serious in an instant. Moreover, as King Si finished speaking, their eyes involuntarily met each other, and each of them could see the nervousness, excitement and a little bit of heat in each other's eyes that were difficult to conceal. As the Jonin and special Jonin of Kirigakure, they knew very well that their own fourth Mizukage was never a person who acted without a purpose. Since he could say something like strategic deployment, combined with the rumors that had appeared faintly in the village before, they already had some guesses. And sure enough, King Si's next words confirmed their guess. In recent days, I'm sure you all have your own guesses. King Si looked at the changes in the expressions of the group of Jonin and special Jonin below, a gleam of light flashed in his eyes, and after a slight pause, he continued, and his tone gradually became colder, then here, I will formally inform you. Our Kirigakure village is about to intervene in this ninja world war, and our goal is not only to obtain resources and seize the ninjutsu and mission shares of other villages, but to eliminate all other ninja villages and finally unify the entire ninja world. At the same time, King Si waved his hand, and a giant map of the ninja world outlined by chakras slowly appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, under King Si's bold words, the whole scene seemed to be paused, and there was silence for a while. Except for some of the Kirigakure high-ranking officials who already knew King Si's idea, all the other people present at the meeting had a flash of bewilderment and confusion on their faces, and then an uncontrollable astonishment surged like a tide, revealing an unprecedented loss of composure. Their pupils dilated unconsciously and their breathing became rapid. Although everyone speculated that the Hidden Mist Village was preparing to participate in the Third Ninja World War, they never imagined that the goals and ambitions of their own Mizukage would be so grand. If I heard correctly, what Lord Mizukage just said was that he wanted to unify the ninja world, right? This was the true thought in everyone's constantly shaking hearts at this moment. It can be said that they understood every word King Si just said, but when these words were connected together, they could not understand a little bit. Or, in other words, they actually understood what King Si wanted to express, but they were too shocked for a moment and found it hard to believe. After all, what King Si said was that they had to use the strength of the Hidden Mist Village alone to face all the ninja villages in the ninja world at the same time. Although they all knew that the overall strength of the Hidden Mist Village was no longer what it used to be, and they were all confident that with their own strength, they could achieve great things for the Hidden Mist Village on the battlefield, but this was still an enemy of the entire ninja world. Without knowing how powerful their own Mizukage was, they were really a little unsure. After all, defeating a ninja village and destroying a ninja village are two completely different concepts, and the difficulty levels are also not on the same level. You know, even the Konoha village, which was the former leader of the ninja world, was unable to withstand the First Ninja World War when facing the four major ninja villages including their Kirigakure. If there had not been a conflict between the Uegakure village and their Kirigakure, and if there had not been some problems in the Kumigakure village, it would be hard to know what the situation in the ninja world would be now. Therefore, the ambition to destroy all ninja villages and unify the ninja world made the Jonin and special Jonin of the Hidden Mist Village, who had the warlike gene engraved in their bones, fall into a state of confusion for a while. A moment later, a burst of noisy voices suddenly broke out in the conference room. After everyone recovered from their shock and digested what King Si said, they did not care that the meeting was still going on and started talking to each other. Boom! 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 At this time, the elder master sitting in the middle of the front row picked up the snake-shaped wooden staff standing beside him and poked the ground with force. At the same time, his old voice, with the blessing of chakra, instantly drowned out the discussions of the crowd and echoed throughout the conference room. Silence! Listen to what the Mizukage says. Soon, silence returned to the conference room, and everyone looked at their Lord Mizukage with burning eyes, waiting for King Si's next speech. Everyone! You heard it right. The next goal of our Hidden Mist Village is to unify the ninja world. And, we also have the strength to achieve this goal. King Si's tone was indifferent, but the will revealed in his words was incomparably firm and unquestionable. Then, King Si changed the subject. However, everyone here can be regarded as the backbone of our Kirigakure village, so it is time for everyone to understand Kirigakure's current strength. Yagura. King Si signaled to his younger brother and asked him to distribute some information about the village situation that he had prepared in advance. Among these information, there is information about the current strength of the Hidden Mist Village, as well as specific information about other ninja villages discovered by the Anbu and Black Zetsu, and a more specific combat plan initially drawn up by CG. When all this information was presented to everyone in the form of various data, they no longer had any doubts about King Si's plan. Everyone knows that the Hidden Mist Village is very strong now. There are even many rumors in the village that the Hidden Mist Village has surpassed the Konoha village to become the number one in the ninja world. However, they still don't have a clear judgment on how strong the Hidden Mist Village is. Now, after learning this information, everyone's confidence instantly increased. It seems that destroying other ninja villages is not as difficult as imagined. Chapter 413. At this moment, everyone truly realized that their Hidden Mist Village now truly had a strength that surpassed that of Konoha village at its peak. Fighting 1 against 4 is not just empty talk. Of course, the information released is only part of the strength of the Hidden Mist Village. You have to know that these Jonin and Special Jonin are not clear about Kyoji's specific level of strength, and only some of the Kirigakure high-ranking members who are close to Kyoji know the meaning and strength of Otsutsuki clearly. In addition, the information about the strength of the Hidden Mist Village does not include the important information that Yagura and Mei Terumi are perfect Jinkriki. It can be said that the perfect Jinkriki who has never had an official record of taking action in the ninja world, and the power they can unleash has not yet been taken seriously by the various ninja villages. However, just the information that can be made known to everyone is enough for the Hidden Mist Village to unify the ninja world. Hence, for a moment, everyone in the conference room had a hint of bloodthirsty fanaticism in their eyes. Although the guiding ideology and spiritual core of the Hidden Mist Village have gradually changed after it entered the era of the 4th Mizukage Seiji, and it no longer has the madness of the blood mist during the 3rd Mizukage Hose period. However, the warlike factor that has existed in the Kirigakure ninjas since the time of the 1st Mizukage Byakuren is always engraved in their bones. Seeing the changing expressions of the crowd, King Si finally nodded slightly in satisfaction, a slight smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Military spirit is available. After a few more breaths, Ching Si stretched out his hand again and pressed lightly forward. An invisible ripple quickly spread out with his palm as the center. Wherever it passed, the people present regained their calm. After everyone calmed down, Ching Si coughed lightly and continued in a deep voice, "Since everyone has no questions, then the next step is the specific deployment." Afterwards, King Si concealed the faint gentle smile on the corner of his mouth, his eyes flickered with light like cold stars, and his expression became solemn and dignified again. For a moment, the atmosphere in the entire conference room became solemn and depressing. The murderous aura emanating from Ching Si was like an invisible cold wave that quickly spread and enveloped every corner of the conference room. This raid on the Sand Village will be led by the Mizukage with the assistance of Karitachi Yagura. King Si first called out the younger brother's name. According to the established strategic deployment, Angkor Fortress will take you close to the Sand Village, and then directly drop you near the Sand Village. Intelligence shows that there is no other way to enter the Sand Village except the entrance through the narrow opening, and the entire Sand Village is also shrouded in a special barrier that combines both perception and defense. As he spoke, CG controlled the map of the ninja world that he had materialized in the conference room using his chakra, and slowly enlarged the Sand Village that lit up in the center of the Wind Country. Suddenly, the specific situation of the Sand Village, which had been completely infiltrated by White Zetsu, was clearly displayed in front of everyone. Kingsee's actions once again won the admiration of all the Jonin and special Jonin. Looking at the extremely clearly marked topographic map of the Sand Village, everyone couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. It seems that their Mizukage has made very complete preparations. Therefore, Kingsea continued as he showed the location of the narrow opening at the entrance to the Sand Village. We need to break in from both the air and the front at the same time. After a brief pause, Kingsea immediately looked at Uzumaki Shinki, the patriarch of the Uzumaki clan of the Hidden Mist Village, who was sitting in the second row. Chief Uzumaki, your mission is to lead the barrier squad and the sealing squad. After the battle begins, in addition to letting them send messages for help to the front line, the Sand Village must remain in a closed state. Most of the Sand Village's forces are now on the front battlefield between them and Konoha. The forces left in the village are extremely limited. Therefore, we must control the Sand Village as quickly as possible, and then turn around and annihilate the 4th Kazekage Raza, Cho, Ebizo, and others who have returned to support. A hint of cold murderous intent flashed in Kingsee's eyes. Yes. Lord Mizukage. Uzumaki Shinki nodded seriously and accepted the task. Then, Kingsea turned his gaze to Zigwashan Puffer Ghost. Zigwashan, your mission as the 7 ninja swordsmen is to accurately behead the high-ranking officials of the Sand Village. These old guys are useless to our Kirigakure village, just kill them all. The Perception Squad will provide you with remote positioning support in the Angkor Fortress. By the way, Uzumaki Kana will be temporarily assigned to the Perception team to provide precise perception support to the combat troops. Kyoji suddenly thought of something and added. In this kind of surprise attack, Kagura's Heart's Eye is a very useful ability. As the clan leader, Uzumaki Shinki needs to support the barrier against the Sand Village, so Uzumaki Kana is the best choice to provide accurate perception. It can be said that with the assistance of the other ninjas in the Perception team, the Perception Water Ball constructed with Uzumaki Kana as the main body can completely expose everything in the Sand Village. Yes. Zigwashan Pufferfish Demon and the rest of the ninja swordsmen, as well as Uzumaki Kana who was sitting next to Uzumaki Shinki, stood up at the same time the moment Kyoji finished speaking, straightened their bodies and answered loudly. Amato. There are no problems with the technical support and the quantity of equipment, right? After hearing the responses from Zigwashan Puffer Ghost and others, Kingsea turned to Sanzu Amato for confirmation. In this operation, the chakra radio and ear-hanging chakra telephone developed by Sanzu Amato and continuously optimized over the years are of paramount importance. With Uzumaki Kana's Kagura Heart's Eye, the Perception team can use this to accurately command the mist ninjas fighting in the Sand Village from the Angkor Fortress. Any target they want to kill will never escape their sanction. No problem. Lord Mizukage. Sanzu Amato answered confidently. With his continuous improvements, these chakra devices have not only undergone great changes in communication distance and clarity, but are also fully capable of withstanding the aftermath of ninjutsu at the intensity of combat at the Jonin level. Very good. Kingsea looked at Amato with satisfaction. The young man he accidentally rescued that year has now become the backbone of the Hidden Mist Village in terms of technology. Chapter 414. Director Ringo. Is there any problem with the medical department? Then, CG looked at the actual head of the medical department, Minako Ringo. After all, as the director of the medical department, China no Hojiki is usually more responsible for serving as the secretary of CG, the 4th Mizukage. Therefore, most of the detailed affairs of the medical department are actually managed by Minako Ringo, and China no Hojiki only controls the general direction. Therefore, the person that CG was questioning was Minako Ringo, the deputy director of the medical department. Medical troops can be formed at any time and provide full medical support to combat troops. Minako Ringo responded without any hesitation. But then, she paused and turned to Kingsea, but Mizukage-sama, if too many medical ninjas are transferred, it may affect the normal operation of the Kirigakure hospital. No problem. Before Kingsea could answer, Chino Kizuna, the head of the team, spoke up. The biggest threat to us from the Sand Village is their ability to use poison. Therefore, I, who master the medical water escape technique, will also go to the battlefield. 20 medical ninjas will be enough. So, there are no more questions from the medical department. Seeing that her superior took over the conversation and decided to go there in person, Ringo Minako nodded obediently and sat down. After all, Chino Kizuna's ability was superior to hers, and medical water escape was indeed more suitable for dealing with the poison of the Sand Village. Seeing this, Kiyoshi smiled at Ringo Minako and Chino Hojumi without saying anything else. I can only say that she is worthy of being the Mizuki's secretary and his sister, she has arranged everything so clearly. Kingsley thought about the overall plan of attacking the Sand Village, and after finding nothing missing, he emphasized, all those who will participate in this battle are Jonin or Special Jonin. Therefore, I only have one request. That is, it must be quick. Hanzo of the Hidden Rain Village once demonstrated his so-called blitzkrieg to the entire ninja world during the last Ninja World War. And now, it's our turn in the Hidden Mist Village. We want to show the other ninja villages what a real blitzkrieg is. Kingsley's voice gradually became louder and his tone became more and more excited. The specific time of the battle is set at 3 p.m. tomorrow. So, everyone, I wish you good luck in fighting. For Kirigakure. Everyone stood up immediately after hearing this, clenched their fists, and responded loudly with excited expressions and flushed faces. Their voices were like thunder, echoing in the conference room for a long time. Very good. Nagato and Xiaoming stay for a while. Everyone else, the meeting is adjourned. Soon, only Nagato, Mei Terumi, Seiji, and Yagura and China no Hojumi who were waiting on the side were left in the huge conference room. Teacher, are there any other tasks? Nagato asked softly. Instead of letting Yahiko and Konan, who had always acted together, go together, he was left alone. And with Mei Terumi, the Six Tails Jinchuriki, also there, Nagato couldn't help but have some guesses in his mind. Yes. Kingsley nodded and confirmed Nagato's question. White Zetsu has already determined the exact location of Kirigakure village, and has also obtained some information about the Seven Tails. Therefore, you two need to go to Kirigakure, capture the Seven Tails and seal it in the Outer Path Demon statue. According to the intelligence, the Seven Tails belonging to the Kirigakure village should have been sealed in the body of the Jinchuriki, but the Seven Tails has never gone berserk over the years, so White Zetsu has not yet confirmed the identity of the Seven Tails Jinchuriki. And this is why I left Xiaoming behind as well. Kingsley explained to the two of them. If they just wanted to invade Kirigakure village and capture the Seven Tails Jinchuriki, Nagato's current strength plus the assistance of the White Zetsu clone would be enough. But the problem is that Black Zetsu only started collecting specific intelligence on the tailed beast Jinchuriki recently, and the location of Kirigakure village has always been secret, and Kirigakure ninjas rarely appear in the ninja world now. In addition, the Seven Tails Jinchuriki has never gone berserk or taken the initiative to attack in these years, so it is necessary for Mei Terumi, the Six Tails Jinchuriki, to take action. You know, there is a certain connection between the tailed beasts. As long as Mei Terumi arrives near the Kirigakure village, the identity of the Seven Tails Jinchuriki can be easily confirmed. After Nagato and Mei Terumi left, Seiji, his younger brother Yagura, and his older sister Chinano, who were waiting for him, left the Mizu Cage building together and prepared to have a small gathering. After all, the three siblings haven't had a meal together for a while. Yagura, be careful in the battle tomorrow and don't kill all the ninjas from the Sand Village. After all, they are all perfect tools. Kingsley said to his younger brother with a chuckle as he flipped the barbecue in front of him. Don't worry. Yagura smiled confidently and immediately replied, just wait in the village for the victory report from us. Haha. Okay. Kingsley raised the wine glass beside him and clinked it with the two of them, then drank it all in one gulp. Immediately, he looked at Chino Kizuna again. Sister Chino, if you still have the energy to save the ninjas from the Sand Village, please save them as well. Their chakra is still useful. Okay. Chino Kizuna agreed without asking any questions. She had heard from Kiyoshi about some secrets of the Otsutsuki clan. Therefore, although she didn't know that Kiyoshi had a 10 tails in his hand, she roughly understood what Kiyoshi was thinking. But Kiyoshi, what are you going to do? Chino asked as she picked up a piece of meat that had been grilled to a beautiful brown color. She was a little confused about the fact that Kiyoshi did not lead the team himself, as this was not in line with Kiyoshi's character. Yagura also stopped eating at this time and turned his eyes over. He was actually quite curious about this. He. Kingsley smiled mysteriously, and did not directly answer Chinano's question. Instead, he took out a telegram from the Takamagahara space and handed it to her. The answer is actually very simple. That's of course because he has equally important things to do. According to the information sent back by White Zetsu who infiltrated the Uegakure village, the four-tails Jinchuriki named Lao Ziai had recently officially fallen out with the third Tsuchikajinoki of the Uegakure village, and left the Uegakure village to become a wandering monk with an erratic whereabouts. However, Lao Zi's uncertain whereabouts only apply to the Uegakure village, and White Zetsu did not spend much effort to successfully find Lao Zi's trace. Therefore, King Si's mission is to capture the four-tails Jinchuriki, Lao Ziai. Chapter 415. After the meeting, at the same time when King Si and the other two were having a small gathering, the huge war machine of the Hidden Mist village finally started to operate at full capacity. Under the control of Sheneng, who was controlled by King Si, the Angkor fortress landed near the Hidden Mist village, revealing its true appearance in front of the Hidden Mist ninjas for the first time. Subsequently, a large amount of war supplies were mobilized and transported to the Angkor fortress. At the same time, in addition to the Jonin and Special Jonin who participated in the battle, a large number of civilian personnel who had already been trained were also mobilized and prepared to go to the Sand Village with the combat troops. Some of these civil servants were specially selected and trained by the Hidden Mist village, while the others were sent from the capital of the Water Country after CG secretly controlled the daimyo of the Water Country. After all, the Sand Village is gone, so why still keep the original Wind Kingdom? After destroying the Sand Village, the Mist Village would of course take over the Wind Kingdom in its entirety and annex the entire Wind Kingdom to become the Water Kingdom, or in other words, a part of the Mist Village. You know, although on the surface the Water Country still belongs to the daimyo of the Water Country, secretly, the daimyo of the Water Country has long become a puppet of King Si. Therefore, in reality, the Water Kingdom has long been under the control of King Si. In King Si's plan, he not only wants to destroy all the ninja villages, but also wants to put the countries to which those ninja villages belong under the rule of the Water Country or the Hidden Mist village. That is to say, in King Si's future, in the entire ninja world, there will only be one ninja village, the Hidden Mist village, and one country, the Land of Water. As for the final decision, whether to combine the Hidden Mist village and the Land of Water, or to re-establish the ancestral country of him and Kagaya 1,000 years ago, we will have to wait until the ninja world is unified. Kirigakure village. The headquarters of the Otsutsuki clan. Otsutsuki Tenshin is talking to the former head of the Hyuga clan branch, who has now changed his name to Otsutsuki Mukai. Of course, now, he is just an ordinary member of the Otsutsuki clan in the Hidden Mist village. However, because Kiyoshi, as the clan leader, basically does not take care of the affairs, and Otsutsuki Tenshin and Otsutsuki Gara basically focus their energy on taking care of Otsutsuki Tonari, and the rest of the Otsutsuki clan members are former Hyuga branches who followed Mukai out of Konoha village. Therefore, the affairs of the Otsutsuki clan are actually handled by Otsutsuki Mukai. It can be said that Otsutsuki Mukai made the right decision to leave the Hyuga clan in Konoha village. Although he did not have the title of clan leader in the Otsutsuki clan in the Hidden Mist village, he actually already had the power of clan leader. Moreover, those former Hyuga branches who joined the Tsutsuki clan in the Hidden Mist village not only broke free from the control of the bird in a cage curse, but also, with the help of the Hidden Mist laboratory, greatly improved the purity of their Byakugan. Some of the better qualified clan members even acquired the Byakugan intimidation eye technique. I can only say that in one's life, choices are really important. Lord Tenshin. Is there anything we need to pay attention to in this battle? Otsutsuki Mukai asked Otsutsuki Tenshin humbly. This was the first major operation he participated in after joining Kirigakure. It was also the first time that the Otsutsuki clan of the 4th Mizukage CG participated in a war in Kirigakure. It was also the first time that Kirigakure had the assistance of the Byakugan in the war. Therefore, he must not let down the reputation of being the head of his own family. He must show the prestige of the Otsutsuki clan of Kirigakure. It's nothing. Just follow Yagura's instructions. Otsutsuki Tenshin shook his head slightly and spoke calmly. Neither he nor his wife Otsutsuki Kara will go to this battle. After all, it does not require the fighting power of both of them to flatten the weakest sand village. Moreover, according to the current system of the Kirigakure village, as the Minister of Police, he needs to stay in the village during wartime. But he immediately changed his mind and said, remember to have half of the tribesmen stay in Angkor Fortress to assist Channa in commanding the battle. The Byakugan and Kagura's mind's eye are perfect for perception. After hearing what Tenshin said, Otsutsuki Mukai was a little confused. He knew that the Kagura heart's eye was the perception ability possessed by the Uzumaki clan, but at this time he had never had any intersection with the Uzumaki clan members who possessed the Kagura heart's eye. After all, although Konoha village has a member of the Uzumaki clan, Uzumaki Kushina, on the one hand, Uzumaki Kushina does not have the perception ability of the Kagura mind's eye, and on the other hand, Uzumaki Kushina's identity is the most important Nine Tails Jinchuriki of Konoha village. A branch of the Hyuga clan will never be allowed to approach her. Therefore, he had no way of knowing how powerful the perception ability of Kagura's heart's eye was. Seeing this, Otsutsuki Tenshin did not explain too much. He just smiled at Otsutsuki Mukai, then turned back into the house to tease his lovely son, Kodoto. After all, it is not easy to describe accurately the unreasonable perception ability of the Uzumaki clan. It is better to wait until they are on the battlefield and let them experience it for themselves. Chapter 416 2:30 in the afternoon on January 45, 1th year of Kirigakure. Angkor Fortress has already entered the territory of the Land of Wind and is getting closer and closer to the Sand Village. On the platform, or deck of the fortress, all the Jonin and special Jonin from the Hidden Mist village are now ready to go, their eyes filled with desire for battle. And at the very front, the commander of this raid on the Sand Village, the Mizukige's assistant, Karatachi Yagura, was standing solemnly. Although he is not tall and has a baby face that can easily deceive others, the aura he exudes is as majestic as a towering mountain. Gulp! 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 The afternoon sun shines on Yagura's body, and combined with the dark red chakra bubbles that unconsciously appear on his body due to his excited mood, it forms a gorgeous bright red picture. A cold light flashed from his eyes, like lightning, looking straight towards the direction of the Sand Village in the distance, as if he could see the whole picture of the Sand Village through the vast clouds, and had the entire Sand Village under his control. Lord Yagura. Angkor Fortress is expected to arrive above the Sand Village in 15 minutes. The voice of Kingsee's tool man, Sheneng, came clearly from the ear-hanging chakra phone worn by Yagura. Got it. Yagura responded calmly, but his heart was not calm at all at this moment. After all, he was about to lead a team to flatten the Sand Village, one of the 5 major ninja villages in the ninja world. To achieve great things and leave his name in history, even though he is already an assistant to the Mizukage, he cannot be immune to and resist this fatal temptation. Lord Yagura. Uzumaki Kana suddenly interrupted Yagura, who was immersed in his fantasy. The strength of the Sand Village's defensive barrier has been confirmed. It will require the use of the fortress's chakra cannon or the 3-tailed beast ball to break it. Yagura shook his head slightly, came back to his senses, thought for a while, and made a decision. Sheneng. Prepare to charge the chakra cannon. I will also take action myself later. Don't leave the Sand Village any time to react. After a few seconds of pause, Yagura turned to Uzumaki Shinki, who was also in the control room, and asked, Chief Shinki. How is the barrier preparation going? No problem. The barrier that blocks perception has been deployed. Before we launch an attack, the Sand Village will not be able to detect us. Uzumaki Shinki answered confidently. As the head of the Uzumaki clan who inherited the legacy of the Uzumaki clan, he was confident about this. In addition, the ninjas of the barrier class and the ceiling class are also ready and can set off at any time. Very good. Yagura nodded with satisfaction. Then you can set off first. Keep in touch at all times. Then, Yagura turned around and said to Otsutsuki Mukai, who was standing not far behind him, Mukai-kun, except for the members of your Otsutsuki clan who stay in the control room to assist Kana in command, the rest of you should follow Chief Shinki and set off together. Remember to use your Byakugan to observe at all times, and if there is any situation, remember to report it in time. Yes. Otsutsuki Mukai nodded and accepted the task. After all, he also knew that most of the ninjas in the barrier class and the ceiling class had weak combat capabilities. Therefore, in order to ensure the safety of the barrier, it was very necessary to protect them. Of course, this doesn't mean that they have no chance to enter the Sand Village to fight. You know, after the barrier is officially formed, the ninjas from the barrier class and the ceiling class can use the barrier to protect themselves, and that's when it's time for them to attack. At the same time, the western part of the Land of Earth. A temple located near the cliff of the mountain. Kingsee's figure, from blurry to solid, slowly appeared at the entrance of the temple. It seems that White Zetsu was not wrong. Through the Rinnegan, Kingsee could clearly see that in the depths of the temple, there was a figure with a huge amount of chakra in his body, which was obviously different from that of ordinary ninjas. Moreover, in his field of vision, that chakra gave a faint feeling of burning. At the same moment when Ching Si showed up, Lao Ziai, who was communicating about Buddhism with the abbot deep in the temple, looked up towards the temple entrance as if he had sensed something, and his slightly solemn expression was evident in his words. Although Lao Ziyi was not good at perception, King Si's powerful chakra aura, which was not concealed at all, would not be unaware of it even if he was slow. So he immediately stopped communicating with the abbot, and quickly moved towards the gate of the temple while jumping. You know, although this place is very remote and the Kirigakure enbu sent by the third Otsutsuki to protect him have not yet tracked him here, but this is still within the territory of the land of earth, and he is also the Four Tails Jinkriki, one of the top fighting forces in the Kirigakure village. Even though he has not yet reached a reconciliation with the four tails in his body to the point where he can fully transform into a tailed beast, but based on his own strength and the borrowed power of the four tails, he is undoubtedly a cage-level powerhouse. Therefore, even if the person coming is a friend rather than an enemy and the chakra aura he exudes is very strong, there is no reason for him to be afraid. Seeing Lao Zi's actions in the temple, Ching Si gave up the idea of entering the temple to capture him, but stood quietly not far from the temple gate, waiting for Lao Zi to appear. Soon, a middle-aged man in dark purple clothes appeared at the gate of the temple. I saw that he had a dark-colored breastplate tightly fitted on his chest, which reflected a cold light. His red hair was tied into a small ponytail, and on his rough and bold face, his thick beard stood up like steel needles. This is exactly King Ji's target, the Four Tails Jinchuriki Lao Shi of the Kirigakure village. Liao Tun Lao Zi? Ching Si asked calmly. Although he used a question mark, his tone was extremely affirmative. Sorry, forgot to set the time, just found out. Chapter 417. The moment he saw King Si's appearance clearly, Lao Zi's pupils shrank suddenly. After all, his situation in the village was completely different from that of Bonfuku, the one-tailed Jinchuriki of the Sand Village who was captured by CG not long ago. After all, he was one of the high-ranking officials of the Kirigakure village. Although he had little power and did not have much say in the village, he still knew the information about the fourth Mizukage of the Kirigakure village, whose name was Otsutsuki CG. Therefore, Lao Zi recognized Ching Si's identity in an instant, and at the same time he became extremely alert in his heart. As the current Mizukage of the Hidden Mist village, he didn't stay in the village, but instead crossed most of the ninja world to the territory of the land of earth, and even accurately found him whom even the Anbu of the Hidden Mist village couldn't find. No matter how you look at it, this is obviously a bad intention. If you say that the fourth Mizukage has no conspiracy and just came to chat with him, the human Kriki, he simply won't believe it. So, Lao Zi asked directly without any politeness, I wonder what the Mizukage has to say about coming to the land of earth. King Si smiled at Lao Zi calmly, it seems that I have found the right person. Come with me. The Four Tails Jinchuriki. I need the four tails in you. Looking at King Si's nonchalant appearance and these extremely harsh and contemptuous words, Lao Zi couldn't help but get furious. These words clearly showed that he looked down on him, the Four Tails Jinchuriki who had the strength of a cage. Even if he can't completely transform into a tailed beast and can't exert the peak power of a Jinkriki, he can't be easily controlled by anyone. Even the damned old fellow, the third Otsutsuki Onoki, didn't dare to look down on him like that when he was talking to him. Moreover, what does it mean that they need the four tails in his body? This is obviously to want his life. You know, the Jinkriki and the tailed beast in his body are one and the same. Once the tailed beast in the Jinkriki's body is extracted, the Jinkriki will die due to the loss of the tailed beast. Therefore, Lao Zi knew that today might not end well. However, he was not too worried about this. He was still very confident in his own strength. He mastered the Kekkei Genkai lava release, and he could borrow some of the power of the four tails in his body. Even if he fought against the third Otsutsuki Noki who mastered the Kekkei eliminating dust release, he would be able to escape unscathed. Besides, this is the land of earth. As soon as the battle breaks out, he believed that the people in the Kirigakure village would definitely notice something. So, it's just a water shadow. The Four Tails Jinchuriki. Lava release old purple. He's not afraid. A flash of lightning suddenly streaked across the sky, and the next moment, Lao Zi moved. Lao Jing, Burning River Rock Technique. I saw Lao Zi rushing towards King Si quickly, forming seals with his hands quickly, and spitting out several balls wrapped in boiling magma from his mouth, attacking King Si frantically. Hat! Ching Si chuckled, his reincarnation eye slightly lit up, and Young Biguna was directly activated, reducing Lao Zi's attacks completely. Then he instantly appeared in front of Lao Zi's rushing figure and kicked him with his leg. Boom! Lao Zi had no time to be shocked, and flew back at a speed even faster than when he came, hitting the temple gate heavily, and then fell into the temple's front yard in a mess. There was a loud bang and the gate of the temple was hit by Lao Zi's body. It fell apart and shattered in an instant like a fragile paper. The huge impact force caused the surrounding ground to tremble slightly. As the temple gate collapsed, a thick cloud of dust rose into the sky like a rolling dark cloud, and then quickly spread, covering the entire front yard of the temple in a grey haze. However, this did not obstruct King Xi's vision at all. The next second, countless yin-yang black sticks accurately locked onto Lao Zi's position and shot towards him rapidly. Young name Biguna may reign. Chapter 418. At the same time that Lao Zi was kicked away by Qing Si, his consciousness was also pulled into the sealed space by the four tails in his body. As one of the nine-tailed beasts created from the 10 tails by the six-path sage Otsutsuki Hago Romo using yin-yang release, how could it not recognize the identity of CG Otsutsuki clan? Although CG has not yet displayed any methods similar to those of the Otsutsuki clan, apart from other things, just the fact that CG has the same horns as the Six Paths brothers, his appearance is similar to theirs when they were young, and his equally transcendent temperament is enough to support the speculation of the four tails. Therefore, the terrifying moment of encountering the Otsutsuki clan made the four tails make a decision. It must fight alongside Lao Zi. Otherwise, I'm afraid it won't end well. Old Purple. The rumbling voice of the four tails echoed throughout the sealed space, we must face this Otsutsuki together. Otsutsuki. Old Zi, who was suddenly pulled into the sealed space by the four tails, was still a little confused. What the hell? Are you talking about the fourth Mizu cage? There is no extra time to explain. Let me put it this way. The name of the six-path sage is Otsutsuki Hago Romo. The four tails said anxiously. At this critical moment, it did not have time to give Lao Zi a detailed explanation. If it can defeat that Otsutsuki, or successfully escape from his hands, it will have plenty of time to spread the relevant information to Lao Zi. Hearing the information from the four-tailed fox, Lao Zi couldn't help but feel a huge wave of emotion in his heart. He never imagined that the fourth Mizukage's surname was the same as the legendary ninja ancestor Six-Path Sage. What this meant was self-evident, so there was no need for Siwei to continue speaking, as Lao Zi had already realized the seriousness of the matter. Otsutsuki, Hago Romo. Otsutsuki, Kiji. Lao Zi murmured unconsciously in a low voice, with an indescribable stagnation in his tone. You know, in the common understanding of the ninja world, the six-path sage discovered the true meaning of chakra and became the savior of the ninja world who ended the chaotic times. He is the legendary founder of the ninja. As for the fourth Mizu cage, who has the same surname as the ancestor of the ninja, it is obvious that he is not a simple person. Now, the fourth Mizu cage has actually set his sights on the four tails in his body. This is really stressful. Without paying attention to Lao Zi's turbulent emotions, the four-tailed fox continued to speak to Lao Zi, while extending his huge fist in front of Lao Zi. Listen carefully. My name is Sun Wukong. The great sage equaling heaven, Sun Wukong. Hearing the four tails say its name, Lao Zi suddenly came to his senses. Now is not the time to worry about the relationship between the six-path sage and the fourth Mizu cage. The most urgent thing is to fight him first before considering other things. Lao Zi's expression suddenly became serious. He knew what the four tails words meant, so he responded to the four tails in the same serious manner, and at the same time stretched out his fist and bumped it with the four tails Son Goku's huge fist. Lao Zi. Lava release Lao Zi. So far. Originally, it would take a long time of hard training to gradually reach a reconciliation with the four-tailed Son Goku in his body and skillfully control its power. When facing the fatal crisis of being captured by the Otsutsuki, CG, with the active compromise and help of the four-tailed Son Goku, Lao Zi coincidentally became a perfect Jinkraki. The original work did not specify when Lao Zi could fully use the power of the four tails. The Book of Formations only introduced that through hard training, he could eventually skillfully control the power of the four tails. However, it is certain that Lao Zi did not fully master the power of the four tails before he fell out with no ki and left the village. Chapter 419. Here it comes. Lao Zi. The voice of the four-tailed Sun Wukong sounded in Lao Zi's heart. Now the man and the beast have become true companions fighting side by side in the face of crisis. Ah! I get it. Lao Ziyi responded in a deep voice. The fiery red high-temperature lava covered his body, and a chakra tail appeared behind him, swinging wildly. It is Lao Zi's most powerful melting chakra mode under normal circumstances. Bloodline limit lava release is not only the ability of the four tails, but also the bloodline limit that Lao Ziyi possesses. The Book of Formations clearly states that Lao Zi's lava release is a fusion of his own fire and earth attribute chakras. Although he has now reached a reconciliation with the Four Tails Son Goku and become a perfect Jinkriki who can perfectly control the power of the Four Tails, he still needs a short adaptation process before he can unleash the full power of the Four Tails. Therefore, gradually releasing the Four Tails chakra has become Lao Zi's best choice. After all, which ninja would use a big move to hit the face right from the start? Isn't it normal for ninjas to conduct probing first and then kill with one strike? Therefore, Molten Release, Granite. Lao Ziyi used his strongest defensive ninjutsu under the lava release chakra mode, and the heavy magma armor instantly wrapped Lao Ziyi tightly. Since the smoke blocked his vision and made it impossible for him to accurately judge Qing Si's attack, then as long as the defense was sufficient, there would be no problem. The yin-yang black stick kept hitting the lava armor on Lao Zi's body, making a ding-dang-dang sound. However, facing the chakra black rod made of yin-yang escape, the lava armor is not enough to completely resist its penetrating force, but this extra layer of defense still buys Lao Ziyi enough time. The moment the yin-yang black stick hit Lao Zi's body, the four-tailed Sun Wukong in Lao Zi's body recognized what it was. Therefore, with the reminder of the four-tailed Sun Wukong, Lao Ziyi immediately made an evasive move. However, Lao Ziyi underestimated Qing Si's speed and overestimated his own strength. While a large number of yin-yang black rods were released from the Takamaji-Ahara space and shot towards Lao Ziyi, Qing Si's figure followed closely and rushed towards Lao Ziyi in the smoke. So, when Lao Ziyi gathered a large amount of chakra under his feet and just jumped to dodge, Qing Si was already waiting for him above the direction he jumped. So, Lao Ziyi suffered a heavy loss once again. Accompanied by another loud boom, Lao Ziyi, who had just jumped high in the last second, fell heavily to the ground like a cannonball in the next second. All of a sudden, the smoke that was already thin and about to dissipate became thick again, and a huge deep pit appeared in the center of the smoke. Roar! An angry roar came from the big pit, and the furious old Ziyi directly entered the state of half-tailed beast. The fourth Mizu cage was different from all the enemies he had encountered before. He was really absurdly strong. Under normal circumstances, even if he used the melted chakra mode and borrowed some of the power of the Four Tails Son Goku, he was still unable to test Qing Si's strength. It seems. This time we really have to fight hard. Lao Ziyi, who had entered the half-tailed beast state, increased his speed rapidly. Guided by his beast-like fighting instincts, he rushed straight towards Qing Si's position. Seeing this, Qing Si raised his eyebrows slightly. Not bad, it's finally interesting, it does seem somewhat realistic. Melting escape undersea needle. The dark red chakra coat on Lao Zi's body instantly turned into bright red high-temperature magma, and he slapped Qing Si heavily. This was a killing move that he could only use when he entered the half-tailed beast state. It was a move that could burn the enemy to death in an instant. However, this move is nothing to Qing Si. He just turned his body slightly, calmly blocked Lao Zi's palm with his arm, and then launched the sealing technique to absorb all the chakra gathered in Lao Zi's hand. Immediately afterwards, Qing Si's left hand directly clasped Lao Zi's shoulder, locked it tightly, and continued to activate his chakra absorption ability, quickly absorbing the molten chakra belonging to him and the four tails in Lao Zi's body. The rapid and continuous loss of chakra made Lao Ziyi terrified, and the four-tailed Sun Wukong in his body also changed his expression. According to Qing Si's absorption rate, Lao Ziyi would lose the ability to resist in a few breaths, and it would also become the fish on the chopping board to be slaughtered by Qing Si, the Otsutsuki. So, in the sealed space, Lao Ziyi and the four-tailed Sun Wukong's two fists, one small and one big, collided again and exploded at the same time. Endless dark red-tailed beast chakra gushed out from Lao Zi's body, and then completely enveloped his body. Oh? Is he going to completely transform into a tailed beast? Qing Si shook his head slightly indifferently, let go of Lao Ziyi, and stepped back. It was rare to have a toy with decent strength. It would be boring if he turned into a tailed beast. The next moment, a huge red orangutan appeared in front of Qing Si, supporting itself on the ground with its hands and roaring at him angrily. Lava escape, flower fruit mountain. A huge sea of magma suddenly appeared and covered the entire temple. Those poor monks in the temple who did not have time to escape, as well as those who escaped but did not escape too far, were easily wiped out by the aftermath of the battle. An area of several hundred meters in radius turned into a sea of magma in an instant. Immediately afterwards, Lao Ziai, who had turned into a four-tailed dragon, unconsciously pounded his chest a few times with his hands, and then hammered hard at the lava sea under his feet. Lao Ji, burning river fire spout. Forget it. Let's end the battle. If we drag it on any longer, we'll be discovered by the hidden Iwa village. Looking at the power erupting from the four tails, King Si thought to himself that the fully formed tailed beast was still too violent and it was not appropriate to continue playing with it. After all, although the few simple rounds of fighting between him and Lao Ziai just now seemed to have caused a lot of noise, this level of chakra was not enough to be sensed by the Kirigakure village. However, once the attack from the perfect four tails spread out, it would be enough to be sensed by the Kirigakure village's perception team. After all, the Kirigakure village is far stronger than the Sand village in all aspects. Although King Si is not afraid of the Kirigakure village, now is not the time to officially confront the village. It would be great if he could capture it secretly. Therefore, King Ji instantly entered the Samsara I Chakra mode and clasped his hands together. Immortal technique Ice Escape Ice Age. Along with the explosion of King Ji's chakra, everything nearby, whether it was the magma-like ground, the volcano and magma impact that erupted from the ground controlled by Lao Ziai, and Lao Ziai who had transformed into the complete four tails, were all frozen at this moment. The four-tailed Sun Wukong. Capture complete. Chapter 420. At the same time as King Si's battle ended. On the other side, the Angkor fortress had already arrived near the Sand village, and under the influence of the shielding perception barrier set up by the Uzumaki clan, it was hovering silently in the sky about 300 meters above the Sand village. The battle to raid the Sand village is about to begin. Sheneng. Report the exact time. Yagura asked in a deep voice during the communication. It's 2:55 now. Sheneng in the control room looked up at the clock on the wall and responded immediately. Very good. Ziguishan. Your ground forces should begin preparations. Begin the action on time in 5 minutes. After hearing the time reported by Sheneng, Yagura immediately gave orders to the Ziguishan puffer ghost. According to the established plan, the Kirigakure ninjas will launch an attack from both the sky and the ground after the barrier of the Sand village is broken. Moreover, 10 minutes ago, the ground forces that launched the attack on the Sand village from the thin line sky had already landed quietly from the Angkor fortress in advance under the leadership of the Ziguishan puffer demon, and blocked their chakra aura 1 kilometer away from the Sand village, quietly waiting for the time to attack. I have to say that the perception class of the Sand village is so lame. Apart from this barrier that has both perception and defense functions and was passed down from the time of the first Kazekage Reito, the rest is really useless. They have been found at their doorstep by the Kirigakure ninja, but they are still sitting in the village, unaware of anything. Of course, this also highlights the power of the barrier set up by the Uzumaki clan, which completely concealed the actions of the hidden mist village. Therefore, it was not until Yagura ordered an attack and the fired chakra cannon had already hit the barrier of the Sand village that the people of the Sand village suddenly realized what was going on. The Sand village, one of the 5 great ninja villages in the ninja world, was attacked. 5 minutes passed in a flash, and soon it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At Yagura's command, Angkor fortress promptly lifted the barrier that had the effect of obscuring and blocking perception, and appeared right above the Sand village. Then, the chakra cannons that had been charging for a long time roared in unison and fired a volley at the barrier of the Sand village. At the moment the chakra cannon was fired, the air ninjas in the Angkor fortress who were left behind by King Si to be used as chakra power sources all fainted because their strength was drained. Suddenly, deafening cannon fire rang out, and streaks of flames shot up into the sky, bringing with them endless destructive power and impact force, burning and distorting the surrounding air. Violent chakra fluctuations surged in the air, forming ripples visible to the naked eye, and the breath of destruction and chaos continued to rush in all directions. Yagura, who was standing on the edge of the deck of the Angkor fortress, had already put on a dark red-tailed beast chakra coat, his eyes were filled with cold light, and he was ready to attack at any time. The roaring chakra artillery fire arrived in an instant and hit the barrier of the Sand village in less than a breath. In an instant, the originally invisible barrier appeared in the void because of the attack, and dense cracks appeared on it. Lord Yagura, please attack at the 3 o'clock direction. At this time, Uzumaki Kana's voice came to Yagura's ears. Under the perception of Kagura's heart's eye, Uzumaki Kana instantly locked onto the weakest point of the barrier that was already shaky and on the verge of breaking, and informed Yagura of it in time. After hearing the information given by Uzumaki Kana, Yagura opened his mouth and fired a tailed beast ball directly in the direction given by Kana without any hesitation. The tailed beast ball lightly hit the barrier and then exploded with a loud bang. Along with the huge roar of the explosion, a sound similar to a mirror shattering instantly resounded throughout the sand village. The next second, the barrier was shattered. Inside the sand village, the ninjas of the barrier squad who were maintaining the barrier suddenly vomited blood from their mouths as they suffered backlash due to the shattering of the barrier. Immediately afterwards, huge explosions occurred simultaneously at the locations where the barrier squads were located. It was not until this time that the perception team ninjas of the sand village finally reacted and realized that their sand village had been invaded, so they hurriedly sent out an enemy attack warning signal. However, this is of no use now, because the Zigwashan Puffer Ghost has already led the team to the front of the line of sky. At the same time, Yagura, who had broken the barrier with a tailed beast ball, continued his actions. He clasped his hands together, and the tailed beast chakra coat wrapped around his body began to violently explode. Water style, Isabu waterfall. Massive waves rushed down like thousands of troops, with tremendous impact force. Under Yagura's control, they surged towards the sand village below. For a moment, the sound of the waves was like thunder, deafening, and the water was like smoke, covering the sky and the sunday.